The main character takes a giant red tomato in his hands and rejoices at its bright color, but immediately becomes upset the fruit turns out to be too sour. The boy decides that next time he will definitely try to grow sweeter tomatoes, and suddenly someone addresses him. Beauty with cute ears braided into a ponytail calls him Mysteria Sagi and says that everyone has already gathered and is waiting only for him. In her right hand, she holds a basket of large red tomatoes. He turns his head to her, looks into her eyes, quietly agrees with the girl, and says that he will come now. Isagi, filled with admiration, thinks about wanting to make his life better. The Remorse Empire Remorse Castle. Various knights in beautiful armor stand in the corridors, and a man calls the boy by name. He sharply says that from now on he is taking away his position as court alchemist, and the main character, stunned, opens his eyes wide and looks at the man, not understanding what is happening. Sagi, surprised, asks him again, "Why did you decide this?" The boy believes that he is doing well with the tasks of the court alchemist, and the man is only amazed that he was asked about it. He says that the main task of the court alchemist is to forge magical weapons for the army. The young man looks at him with surprise. The man grumbles that the boy neglects his work and only digs in the ground. He looks indifferently at the scroll in his hands. This man is Garrus, the head of the Imperial Alchemy Department. The boy disagrees with him and says that this is not some underground company. Isagi hides his right hand in the sleeve of his kaftan, and the head of the Imperial Alchemy Department closely watches his movements. The boy takes out a tiny packet, holds it in his hand, and persistently asks to look, saying that he grows agricultural crops using alchemy. He, excited and with an angry expression on his face, points to the packets in his hands and defiantly says that he grows varieties that grow even on completely dry and poor soil. The man, with a certain indifference in his voice, says that it is nonsense, and if there is a shortage of food, it must simply be taken by force. He props his chin with one hand, stretches the other forward, and believes that this way is more effective. The boy trembles with anger, tightly squeezing a packet of seeds with his left hand. He is fed up with everything and thinks that he cannot endure this any longer. The Roman Empire became powerful through aggression and conquest, so it invests a lot of effort and people into the development of its army. He believed that such irresponsible decisions make people suffer. He remembers hungry children on the street, and to save this country, he wanted to solve the food problem with the help of alchemy. The head of the Imperial Alchemical Department suddenly stands up, leans his hands on the table, and declares that lately he has been avoiding work and even engaged in farming within the castle walls, but this will no longer continue. Asagi asks if he has been removed from his position. He believes that he honestly fulfilled his quota, but still remembers he is an ordinary orphan, so that man treats him condescendingly. Hisagi still believes that he was simply doing what he had to and is sincerely convinced. Alchemy was created not for killings, but to make people happy. Hisagi looks at his now former boss with fierce anger. Garius half turns to him and says that now he is free. The man turns completely and, looking at the young man with an indifferent gaze, says, "Alchemists must obey silently." The boy looked at him with disgust and understood. The department head sees alchemists only as tools. He calmly said that he understood and accepts the order. The main character walks through the empty city, passes various buildings, and enters a structure with a sign that reads, Sagi's Workshop. He takes off his outerwear near the door, and the same girl again calls him Mr. Isengi, smiles warmly, and wishes him good morning. A sweet girl with little ears and a tail approaches him, gently asks how his day went. A charming smile shines on her face, in her hands a wooden tray covered with a napkin. She is a representative of the beast race. Her name is Mercia. Isagi enters the room, throws his jacket over his right arm, and looks at her with sadness in his eyes. He is surprised that she has already arrived. Mercia works as a maid at the court, and in every free moment she helps them in this workshop, and the man often warmly recalls the time spent together with her. To return life to the exhausted land, they conducted experiments on growing crops here together. The main character sits on a chair with sadness and sighs heavily. The girl notices his condition and, confused, cannot understand what is wrong with him. She nervously suggests something in her voice, notices that something is oppressing him, and looks at him with anxiety in her eyes. The girl asks what happened. The main character suddenly falls silent. He sadly begins to tell her the whole truth about what happened, and Mercia shouts loudly in surprise and does not understand how such a thing is even possible. She became terribly angry and sharply said that Mr. Asagi worked for the good of the empire. The girl could not agree with this, so in anger, she clenched the paper in her right hand and leaned on the table with her other hand. The boy is confused by her excessive reaction and extends his hands in a peaceful gesture, trying to calm her. Mercia is still very angry and asks him if he is angry. He quietly smiled and calmly admitted that he would be lying if he said he was not angry, but it was enough for him that she recognized him. And he also says that on the other hand it is even good. Mercia looks at him with surprise. The main character sincerely thanks her for her care. He explains that he is an orphan and was alone for a long time. The boy smiles, places his hand on her chest, and says that he is glad she became his girlfriend. The girl blushes a little and addresses him by name. She asks him with a trembling voice what he will do now, and the boy confusedly scratches his cheek with a finger and hesitantly says that he did not expect to be fired, so he has not thought of anything yet. The main character touches his chin with 2 fingers, thoughtfully wondering if they will be happy to see him at the orphanage and if he will be able to live and work there, while the girl looks at him. Her cheeks redden, she crosses her arms over her chest and freezes in thought about what to do next, but suddenly an idea flashes in her head, and hesitantly she suggests that he go with her to her homeland. The main character turns to her with surprise, looks confused, and understanding nothing, exclaims questioningly. Merci becomes embarrassed and awkward, puts her hands forward, and hurriedly says that she did not mean that at all. The girl explains that she just wanted to suggest changing the environment. From the owner's emotions, her ears droop, and her tail instantly becomes alert. Isagi frowns slightly, thoughtfully listening to her words. He puts his hand on his chin and considers her proposal to go with her to her homeland to change the environment. The main character recalls that her homeland is the kingdom of beastfolk. In his imagination, he draws a map of the Remuris Empire and the kingdom of beasts, where most inhabitants are beastfolk, and the girl confirms his words and adds that she is simply from a small village on the outskirts. Isagi says he is glad she invited him, but doubts whether he can be useful. Suddenly Mercius jumps closer to him and confidently replies, yes, he will definitely come in handy. She crosses her arms over her chest, looks seriously, frowns a little, and says that with an alchemist like him, everything will become much better for them. The man looks at her with surprise, impressed by her words, and addresses her by name. Mercia sadly says that although their village has many natural treasures, the food situation is getting worse every year, and she deeply misses her native places, the forests, mountains, and the animals that live there. He tells that when she first offered to help him with the research, she said she wanted to make life easier for people by creating plants that would grow even on poor soil. The main character suddenly remembers. He promised to send the seeds to Mercius's homeland immediately after working on them, and now he thoughtfully looks at the bag of seeds lying nearby on the table. Isagi recalls that he recently worked with this crop and managed to collect a lot of data. The main character puts his hands to his mouth and looks thoughtfully ahead. The girl looks at him in surprise. The boy touches his chin and frowns, thinking about how to make it grow easily in any area. Suddenly, the main character exclaims, "Got it," and Mercia looks at him in surprise. The boy grabs the bag from the table, sharply turns his head to the girl next to him, looks her in the eyes with furrowed brows, and firmly says that he will go to her homeland. The main character spreads his arms wide to the light, looks confidently at the girl, and says that maybe they will manage to use the crops they created. Then he looks at her with a smile and thinks that as soon as they manage to have enough food, they will be able to share their success with the whole world. The girl approaches closer, responds with the same sincere smile, and thanks him from the bottom of her heart. But in a moment her smile fades, she noticeably tenses and falls silent for a while. Then, with anxiety in her voice, she asks him if he is really sure about this, and the main character looks at her in surprise, not understanding what she means. She nervously clenches her hands and covers her mouth with her palm, turns away and says that with his abilities and experience he will be useful in any country, and he looks at her in surprise and reminds her that she was the one who invited him. The girl blushes slightly and apologizes to him for her recent suggestion, covering her mouth with her hand and admitting that she just got too carried away. The boy says that it is better to accept help from a neighbor than to remain tied up and unable to do anything. He extends his hand to her and believes that by acting freely, they can change the empire. The main character places his right hand on his chest and smiles warmly. Isagi tells her that she helped him not only in research but was always by his side, so as a sign of gratitude, he wants to help her. He asks if he can do that. Small tears appear in Mercy's eyes, and she wipes them with her left hand. The main character says that then he will pack his things and go to the animal kingdom, and the girl agrees with a smile. She, a little embarrassed, whispers that then she will also quit and come. He smiles, pulls out a large bag, starts packing his things, and says that they will see each other again. The girl is already about to leave and quietly hums to herself, when suddenly the boy begins to understand her words and freezes, looking at her with surprise. Isagi suddenly runs out of the workshop, calls the girl and asks her to wait. She, already on the city street, hears his voice, turns around and, surprised, asks herself what happened. The main heroine does not believe that she is really going to quit and leave with him. Mercia confirms this and says she cannot leave him alone. The main hero, with a trembling voice, asks the girl if she is really sure she wants to leave the job. He is convinced that service in the palace is prestigious, and the salary there is not small. but the girl only smiles in response. Her face slightly flushes. She touches her chin with her palm. Mercia gently smiles, closes her eyes, and says that now he worries about her just as she recently cared for him. The main hero sighs with relief, looking at her, and offers to go together if she wants. The girl agrees without hesitation. A few days later, the heroes are about to leave the city and are already passing through the city gates when a carriage with a coachman drives by. The girl gently asks him to drive calmly and asks if anything else is needed, and Isagi agrees. The main hero glanced ahead with a slight smile and calmly said that he put both water and food in the magic bag, so there are no problems. The girl firmly holds the straps of the huge backpack on her back and looks with a dissatisfied grimace at the magic backpack, created by alchemy. It holds much more than one can imagine. Mercia looks at him and says that the road to the kingdom of beasts will take about a month ahead, is a long and difficult journey, but she advises to enjoy it, and the boy looks sadly at the castle behind the walls and agrees. Sagi smiles, looking through the round window at the landscape behind it, her mouth slightly open in surprise. Another girl stands nearby, also smiling and looking in the same direction, and two men are riding beside them. One of them is reading a book, holding it in his hand. Everything unfolds on September 12 and 17. They wander the city, and the main hero looks at the girl and points to the large tower standing right in front of them. On September 28, they pitch a tent in a field and light a small fire nearby. Mercia sits near the burning logs surrounded by stones, and Isagi hands her a glass with a hot drink, from which steam rises. On October 7, they are riding in a carriage again. Marcia, with a trembling voice, tries to wake the boy and calls. "Wake up." He reluctantly opens his eyes and sees the silhouette of his friend in the darkness. The girl tells the main character that they have arrived, and Isaki rubs his eyes with his left hand and sleepily looks out the window at the landscape. The main character opens his eyes in surprise and says that this is the homeland of Mercia. He gazes at the lively streets where many humanoid beasts walk. This is the kingdom of beasts, the village of Plumna. When they are dropped off, the main character freezes in amazement. There are so many beast people in front of him that he looks around the streets in confusion. Although this is only the outskirts, they are still in the kingdom of beasts. Isangi and Mercia watch the beast people. In front of them is a burly man with a bull's head. He is smiling, carrying a bucket of water in his left hand, and holding a pole with several more buckets on his shoulder with his right. Behind him, a girl is pulling a rope wrapped around a goat's neck with all her might, trying to move it. A little further away, a woman is closely examining a shovel from a merchant. Nearby, a boy with rabbit ears, holding a cage with a rooster, notices them with surprise, and next to him a girl is bustling, trying to catch a chicken. Mercia pulls him to her home, and the boy hesitates and asks if they should first greet the elder, and he is troubled by the thought of whether it is surprising that the man suddenly appeared. The girl asks him not to worry, the elder is her father. She looks seriously and places her right hand on her chest, and the main character, surprised, loudly asks her. He says that she should have told him earlier. Mercia smiles, apologizes to him, closes her eyes, and says that she wanted to make a surprise, so she kept silent. The boy asks what he should do and admits that he is nervous now. Isagi worries that they will say that alchemists are no longer needed, and the girl reassures him and says that everything is fine. Mercia, with a serious face, clenches her fist in anger and says that if he says that again, she will hit him, so to speak, give him a lesson. The main character stands behind, confused, and thinks, did she just say she will hit me? The girl waves her hand toward her house and calls Isengi to come. He follows her. After a few minutes, they approach a large house, and the girl says that they have arrived. This is her home. Before stepping inside, Mercy turns to him and quietly says that she needs to talk to her father and mother first. The main character agrees and says that he understands her. The girl touches the door handle. Suddenly, a smiling woman appears before her, very happy about her return, and says that Mercy has come back. The girl calls the woman mother and asks her not to scare her so unexpectedly anymore, while the boy watches this scene with surprise. The main character froze in surprise when he entered Mercy's house. Standing before him was a very angry man who looked at him with hostility, and Hisagi immediately understood. This was Mercy's father, who radiated open hostility. The man nods, inviting him to sit on the bench opposite himself and his wife, next to Mercia. Isagi politely thanks him and sincerely apologizes for the trouble. The main character stammers a little and says uncertainly that he is glad to meet you. The boy explains that he came from the Remuris Empire and calls himself the Alchemist Isagi. Suddenly, Mercy's father interrupts him and shouts for him to be silent. The boy is frightened and looks at him in surprise, and the man angrily says he will not give his daughter to some suspicious stranger. The main character comes confused and, understanding nothing, asks in surprise what is going on at all. The village elder angrily yells at the boy again and says that Mercia is his beloved daughter, and the boy here is just a stranger who appeared out of nowhere. Suddenly, Mercy's mother interrupts him, a smile playing on her face. "I like this boy," she says, and her husband immediately falls silent, looking at his wife with surprise and asking as if he doesn't believe what he heard. The main character felt embarrassed by this situation, so he apologized. Mercy's mother jokes that her daughter finally brought a man home. The woman thinks they have already decided everything for themselves. Suddenly, Mercia jumps up from her seat, which surprises everyone around. She blushed to her ears, grabbed the edge of her dress, and loudly exclaimed that everything went wrong. She just wanted to introduce Asagi as the new resident of their village. The father froze in surprise, looking at his trembling daughter and the young man beside her, while his wife stood nearby and smiled awkwardly. The man felt a bit embarrassed and suggested starting the introduction over, introducing himself as Kelsith, head of this village. The elder asks if he wants to move to their village, and Asagi smiles kindly, agrees, and asks for permission to practice alchemy there. Mercy's parents are silent, embarrassed by his words. The father slightly opens his mouth, the mother frowns, and the boy looks at them anxiously, not understanding what happened. Mercia looks at Asagi and thinks that her parents do not know what alchemy is at all. The boy blinks in surprise, and the man scratches his head and, a little embarrassed, admits that he is really even ashamed, but it's true. Suddenly, everything became clear to Asagi. He asks if they have ever met alchemists. The girl says that there are almost none here, so the main character decides to first explain who alchemists are. He smiles and with a spark in his eyes explains, alchemists are people who, thanks to magic, can control substances, change materials, and transform them into one another using spells. He believes creating something that differs significantly in quality from the original material is difficult, but it is a very useful skill. The girl's parents frown and silently ponder his words. The girl sighs and says that it is too complicated to understand, so it is better to simply show alchemy in practice. The boy looks at her and agrees, saying she is right. The hero approaches Kelsey and asks if he can take the sword hanging on his belt. The man looks at his weapon and agrees. The boy carefully examines the sword. Kelsey asks him what he thinks, and with obvious admiration says that it is a wonderful sea cow that he bought recently. The boy replies that there is no sea cow in this dagger. The man angrily asks him again. The main character says that alchemists see the true essence of materials. This plain, low-quality metal, similar to manatite, is called gnometite. The girl imagines in her head a merchant who sells fake weapons and brazenly lies that it has magical power, and the man angrily says that it costs 20 silver coins. The boy takes off his gloves, firmly grips the sword in his hand, and confidently says that everything is fine. He will remake it into a dagger from real manatite. Mercy's mother, thoughtful, asks in surprise. Mercy's father also froze in amazement. He does not understand how their son can turn a sword into a precious material and asks how he will do it. The main character takes the sword in his hands. A magical circle appears around him. The weapon begins to shine, and the girl's parents watch this with surprise, not hiding their admiration. The boy decided that first he needs to change the shape and weight of the dagger. He concentrates and uses magic to perform various manipulations to remodel its structure. The main character smiles sincerely, extends the enchanted dagger to his friend's parents, and says that everything is ready. The man takes the weapon in his hands, looks at the boy with surprise, and asks if this is a real manatite dagger. Isagi suggests passing some magical power through it. To be sure, the man does so and exclaims in astonishment. Kelsey channels a flow of magical power through the new weapon. From the surprise, her jaw drops, her eyes open wide, and the man also looks at the dagger stunned. He notices a target on the wall behind the main character, and with all his strength, throws his new weapon in one quick and precise motion at the target, saying he wants to test it. The dagger fulfills its task, but to the elder's surprise, it tears the target and makes a hole in the wall. The man looks out the window, confused, and sees that the dagger is stuck in the ground outside. Kelsey blushes a little and smiles, saying that everything is fine. Behind him, his wife puts her hand on his shoulder and with a forced smile asks what he is doing. The man turns to his wife. It is clear he is a little afraid of her. He nervously mumbles that he did not think he had such strength. The woman looks at him sternly, clenches her fists, and says, "Don't make excuses." Kelsey apologizes to her. The main character is impressed and a little confused. He apologizes, says he should have warned them in advance and that the boy won't be able to fix it so quickly. Isagi takes a piece of wood out from behind his backpack. After some time, the wall remains intact, as if the target is still hanging in the same place. The girl says that this is very cool. The main character thanks her, and the boy magically separates a piece of wood from the log. He says that alchemists can do this, and he most dreams of growing crops using alchemy, while the man looks at him seriously and says that this place is infertile and there is no point in farming here. The main character looks at him in surprise and says that he already knows about this. Isagi adds that because of this, the supplies in the mountains and forests are also decreasing, and the man does not understand and asks why then the hero came so far if he already knew all this. The main character looks at the village elder with unwavering determination, places his left hand on his chest, and says inspiredly that he came here to improve the food situation with the help of alchemy. Kelsey thoughtfully places her hand on her chin and looks at him seriously. The boy explains that he heard from Mercia about the village's problems and wants to help grow crops even on poor soil using plants he improved with alchemy. Isagi says that he also wants to reduce the number of hungry people even if it is only one person, and he thoughtfully chooses his words. Suddenly, the girl stands up. Mercia says that if nothing changes, the wealth of the mountains and forests will only decrease. The girl looks decisively at her parents and loudly asks for permission to engage in agriculture with the help of Lord Isagi's alchemy to save the village's future. Kelsey closes her eyes and smiles slightly, as if carefully hiding her hope. The man says that it's not that he fully believes in it, but he still thinks he has a chance. The village elder looks at his smiling wife and says he gives him permission. The main character is stunned and completely confused, his mouth wide open in surprise, and nearby Mercia smiles gratefully. Both sincerely thank Mercia's parents. The man quietly looks at his wife, who is writing on a scroll, and says that Isagi needs his own house. They decide to give him a spacious home, and the woman hands the scroll to their daughter. She tells Mercia to take her Segi to the free house. The girl replies that she understands everything and accepts the scroll, then turns to the boy, smiles, and calls him to go with her. In the palace he felt constrained, but here he can finally do what he loves and be himself. Mercia and Isagi walk down the street, and from around the corner, a girl silently watches them. She instantly understood who it was. The main character and the girl walk side by side, passing the outskirts of the village and heading toward the forest, and the young man dreams that thanks to alchemy, life in this village will become better. They walk along the forest path, and the girl says that his home is here. They make their way through the trees, and the boy imagines that this is where his new life begins. He looks forward with anticipation at his new home. But in front of the girl and the boy stands a small old house without part of the roof, and they look at this building confusedly, not understanding what it is. Mercia, holding a piece of paper in front of her, opens her mouth in surprise and frowns, looking at the building standing before them. Sagi stands confused and asks if this is his new home. The girl says that this is a neglected old house. A very disturbing, even gloomy energy emanates from her. She fiercely clenches the sheet of paper in her hands and is outraged that he wants to force Mr. Isagi to live in such a terrible place. The main character looks at the girl with surprise and slight fear, and suddenly the man's words flash in his head. This house is already old. He instantly remembers that Kelsey warned him. Mercia sharply turns around and shouts that she cannot allow this, clenches her fists in anger and wants to go and tell him everything, while Isagi raises both hands, trying to calm her, and says that everything is fine. The girl turns to him and firmly says that she disagrees. Determination burns in her gaze, her eyebrows are slightly furrowed, and when she looks at the boy her cheeks blush slightly. Isagi clenches his left hand into a fist and says that if the house is not suitable for living, it is better to rebuild it, explaining to her that this is exactly how the alchemist thinks. The boy, smiling and with a dreamy sparkle in his eyes, says that he has always dreamed of trying to build the house of his dreams, and the girl, surprised, asks again about the dream house. When the main character worked as a court alchemist, he was treated with contempt because he was a simple person from an orphanage. He believes that it was precisely because of this that he had to live in a workshop that resembled a huge warehouse more than a real home. The main character smiles, looks at the house, and says that he will try to build what he likes, and the girl lowers her hands and agrees with him, although a little sadness can be heard in her voice. The main character, wearing a glove, places his palm on the wall of the house. He thoughtfully wonders if this house is really so old that it can no longer be used. The girl closely watches his every move. He begins to take off his gloves. The boy decided to first demolish this house, looks at the old ruin with determination and a slight smile, slightly frowning, and then confidently directs a stream of magic at the building. A magical circle appears on his palm, and the boy begins to influence the tree with it. He changes the properties of the wood, and in a moment the tree starts cracking and swaying in all directions. Finally, the building completely collapses, leaving behind only a pile of various sticks. The girl behind silently watches, and the boy wipes his forehead from fatigue and smiles, and she looks at him in surprise. She picks up several boards, throws them over her shoulder, and holds them with her hand. Mercia smiles at him and says she will gather all the scattered boards separately. The boy thanks her with obvious surprise in his voice, but thinks to himself that those boards are probably very heavy. He squats down and begins rummaging through his backpack. The main character says he wants to get rid of the weeds to prepare the plot. Feeling something in his backpack, he joyfully exclaims, "Here it is," and takes out a hybrid herbicide. Isagi significantly changed the composition of this product, Using alchemy, it became many times stronger and acted instantly, so the main character begins spraying the agent on the grass in his plot. The main character smiles and happily says that everything is fine, encouraging himself and the girl to start building the house. Mercia looks at him and wipes her face with her left hand from fatigue. The main character takes a large wooden stick out of the magical backpack and, frowning slightly, examines it carefully, while the girl next to him also rummages through the backpack and finds another stick. She calls out his name, surprised and frightened, looking at him with anxiety, while Asagi falls to the ground under the weight of the stick and loudly exclaims in surprise. They pull out a piece of wood from the ant that he managed to take from the plant monster. The main character touches the tree. Alchemy activates. A magical circle appears around his palm. He strengthens the tree with its help, and Isagi uses levitation magic and lifts a bunch of various sticks into the air. He directs the wooden blocks where needed, looking at them intently, and the boy controls the wood and begins laying the foundation of his future dream house from it. The girl next to him looks as if she cannot believe her eyes. Her eyes are wide, her mouth slightly open in shock, and the boy feels that now no one can stop him. Focused with a furrowed brow, he continues to create his dream house with magic, this time building walls and windows, then taking on the roof. He already has the perfect house plan in his head, and he happily brings it to life. The doors are already installed, only the rest of the work remains. Finally, he finishes the construction by putting the roof on the house. Isagi joyfully says that everything is ready, smiles, and spreading his arms to the sides, looks at his new beautiful house, and his girlfriend standing nearby also examines the new house. The main character shields his eyes from the sun with his right hand to better see the building in front of him, placing his left hand on his side. The girl, crossing her arms over her chest, and with eyes full of admiration, says that it is wonderful. They take off their shoes and enter the main character's new apartment. The boy is a little shy and asks the girl if it is too much, and she, covering her mouth with her hand in surprise and admiration, blushes slightly. Merci turns to him, smiles, and says that now she understands what his dream house looks like. The girl runs her fingers over the kitchen tables, and the main character happily watches her. The boy goes upstairs to the second floor and shows it to the girl. She watches him with surprise, and they even find a bathroom in his new home. The main character says that later he will probably gradually set up a workspace. Asagi asks the girl to help arrange the furniture around the house, and Mercia, smiling and closing her eyes, says, "Count on me." The main character, disappointed, pulls only one chair out of the bag and realizes that is all he brought with him. He sighs lightly, places the chair by the table, and says somewhat ironically, "If you think about it, it looks like we didn't bring any furniture at all." The girl smiles and says there is nothing to be done, there simply was no space in that set. The boy, disappointed, recalls his previous job where papers were scattered everywhere and agrees with the girl. Suddenly, the girl's ear twitches. She hears someone calling her and asking if she is there. Merci quickly runs out of the house and, surprised, sees that her mother called her. The woman looks ahead stunned, opens her mouth, and covers it with her hand. She turns to her daughter and asks if she has ever seen such a beautiful house in their village. Mercia enthusiastically explains to her that he remodeled the house using alchemy to make living in it much more comfortable. Her mother is amazed to hear that he remodeled the house and says that alchemy is really cool. The main character feels a bit awkward, nervously scratches the back of his head with his right hand and throws his head back, apologizing for changing everything here at his discretion. The woman stretches out her hands forward, smiles, and says that everything is fine. She apologizes to him for the unexpected visit, freezes in the doorway, and quietly says she wants to help with cleaning so he can live here right away, but awkwardly feels that her help seems unnecessary. The man gently says that he is pleased by her care. The woman asks with a smile if she can see the house from the inside, and he smiles in response and gladly invites her to come in. The woman enters the house with joy and surprise, which the boy had built earlier, and Mercy's mother, running her hand over the table, says admiringly that the house is very beautiful and the kitchen is spacious. Her daughter calmly looks at her, and the main heroine is silent. Suddenly, he points to the kitchen shelf behind the girl and says that this shelf is too high for her, and she turns to him in surprise. Mercia rises on tiptoes, with a serious expression on her face, stretches her right hand up, trying to reach the shelf, and confidently says that if she stretches well, she will definitely reach it. The boy behind got a little confused and says he will make her shorter now. He is going to use alchemy. A magic circle appears around his hands, and the girl stretches and grabs the door handle. The woman looks around and asks if it is nice here, adding that if all the kitchen items are arranged, this kitchen will become even better than theirs. The girl nearby instantly comes up with an idea, and Asagi, who is standing nearby, feels a bit embarrassed, scratches her head, and pulls her hand back. Suddenly, Mercia shouts loudly, turns to her mother, and folding her hands in supplication, asks if they have any furniture or household items they do not use, and if they can bring them here. After some time, Mercia finds herself in the middle of the main character's furnished kitchen, puts her hands on her hips, and says that it is very cozy here now, while the boy only opens his mouth in surprise. The main character with sparks in his eyes says that it is cool, and thanks her now it feels more like home here, and the girl turns away and responds modestly that she is glad. Marcia stands in the middle of the room and carefully examines everything around. The walls are empty, begging for something to hang, and a vase would definitely suit the table. The boy freezes in surprise and looks at her. The girl tilts her head slightly to the side, closes her eyes, and smiles, suggesting to have dinner right now. The girl carefully takes out a large pot and places it on the table, first laying down a napkin. Versia explains to him that her mother prepared a delicious dish for them, so now they can eat, and the boy remembers his mother. The girl smiles and lifts the lid of the cauldron, and the main character, looking at the dish in surprise, opens his eyes and mouth wide and exclaims enthusiastically that the dish looks very appetizing. The boy realizes that it is a milk soup and rejoices. The girl apologizes for the simple dish. Isagi smiles, reassures her, and says that this is exactly what she wanted to eat, and the girl thanks her. Mercier pours one serving. On the tray standing on the table is a soup of a special sienna color, a milk soup with mountain herbs and mushrooms, and next to it bread from a magical bag. The main character smiles, takes a spoon, and is ready to taste the milk soup. The girl stands behind him and wishes him a good meal. Isagi turns to her with surprise. Isagi is nervous and shyly asks the girl if she wants to eat together with him. Marcia blushes deeply after his words, and her tail almost rises up from excitement. She sharply turns away from him and, shouting, insists that she is only a servant and cannot eat at the same table with him. The boy looks at her in surprise and tells her that they are no longer in the castle and no one will scold her for that. The girl opens her eyes wide in surprise and asks if she can really join. The main character turns to her and smiles, offering to eat together. The girl presses her hands to her body, slightly tilts her head to the side, her face blushes, she smiles, and thanks him for allowing her to join. Marcia and Isagi sit at the table, on which there is milk, soup, and bread, and the main character smiles and jokes that she sat unusually opposite him. The girl, covered in paint, sincerely admits that she feels the same way. She says that for some reason she cannot calm down while he is nearby. The boy replies that there is nothing strange about it and advises her to try to control these emotions. You thank the girl for the food once again, and she accepts your gratitude. You raise the spoon to your mouth, gently blow on it to cool the milk soup, and only then put the spoon to your mouth. Isagi's eyes open wide in surprise. She says enthusiastically that it is very tasty, and the boy shares his impressions and says that the sweetness of the milk is well felt in the mouth. He looks into the spoon and asks Mercio what the plant is called, and she explains. It is creek-cut grass, which often grows in the surrounding forests wild, but according to the girl, very tasty. The main character imagines that the stem crunches under his teeth, and the boiled leaves are soft and tender. He sees this grass in his mind and thinks that it is probably tasty both boiled and fried. He catches the taste of mushrooms and the salty flavor of bacon, which simply melt alongside the tender sweetness of milk, and imagines all these products together. The boy bites into a piece of bread with pleasure, dips it into the milk soup, and thinks about how the bread has completely soaked up the soup, becoming soft and so easy to eat. The girl smiles, looking at the happy boy who is enjoying his lunch and giving her quiet peace, while the main character says he is full and leaves an empty plate behind. The girl with a smile says she is glad he liked it, gathers all the dishes from the table onto one tray and takes them away, and Mercia smiles and says she will wash the dishes herself. The boy gently refuses. No need, I will clean everything myself, because he believes it is better for her to return home. She came to the homeland after so many years. The girl raises the dirty dishes to her nose and says completely seriously that she will stay. The boy looks at her in surprise and asks again, does she really want to stay here for the night? The girl firmly says that she will stay here to live and serve him. She puts her hands on the table and looks at him. The main character is very surprised by these words, and a blush appears on his face. He, his voice trembling with excitement, asks her to wait and stretches out his hands as if he wants to make peace. The boy asks if she understands that this is no longer the imperial palace and he is no longer a court alchemist. She replies that she understands. Merci crosses her arms on her chest and confidently declares that she is ready to serve him as long as he wishes. She cannot be persuaded otherwise, and the main character opens his mouth in surprise and looks at her with admiration. Isagi feverishly grasps for words to convince the girl, and with a tremble adds that he still needs to arrange a separate room for her, but right now he cannot do it. She says that her things are already waiting in the free room on the second floor. She points with her hand to her things that are already lying there. The main character notes that she, as always, did everything quickly. The boy is still awkwardly trying to show his feelings to the girl, and Mercia looks at him sadly and asks if she can do it herself. The boy sighs wearily and seems to say that he will be glad and that her help will really come in handy, and the girl, with a smile and admiration in her voice, asks again if it is true. Iseji frowns a little and advises the girl to still tell her parents they will worry, especially Kelsey. The main heroine recalls the angry village elder who shouted that he would not allow it, and the girl has no idea what to do. She trembles a little and says uncertainly that she has permission from her mother. The boy confusedly asks again about the mother, and then suddenly understands what it is about. Not far from the main character's house, in the village already conquered by the night, the village elder, angrier than ever, loudly calls his daughter by name. He clenches his left hand into a fist with force and anger and shouts, demanding that she return home, declaring that he will not allow her to live with Isagi. The boy is confused, and the girl is surprised. The next day, the girl quietly knocks on the door of the main character's house, which he recently built himself with the help of alchemy. The boy looks at the girl with anxiety, greets her by name, and asks if she discussed everything with Kelsey yesterday. The girl is sad, holding the edge of her dress, ears down and silent. Mercier sadly says that her father did not give permission, so she will have to come from home every morning to help him, and the main character understands her. The girl asks him for forgiveness with deep sorrow. Isagi sees in her a native daughter, and therefore considers it quite natural, and the alchemist recalls how the village elder was terribly angry, clenched his fist, and demanded that she return. The boy hopes that they will manage to have a normal conversation. Looking at the upset girl, he says that it will be enough for him just that she comes. She turns and looks at him with a mournful gaze. Suddenly, the girl approaches closer and loudly says that she will still persuade her father to allow her to live and work in the same house. She puts her hand on her heart and asks for a little time. The boy is surprised by her reaction. Isagi calmly says that she does not need to try so hard it would be sad if they quarreled. He extends his hands in a peaceful gesture, and, a little embarrassed, imagines how he would worry if they suddenly started living together. Mercia is still trying to object to him. The boy, scratching his head in surprise, threw his hand back. Another girl with ears watches everything from behind the bushes and calls Mercia by name. She turns around in surprise, trying to understand who called her, while Isaki leans forward and peeks from behind Mercia, also looking with surprise at this unfamiliar person. A young, beautiful girl with cute ears appears before them. She extends one hand forward, presses the other to her chest, and runs towards them, rejoicing because she is sure this is true mercy. Her mouth dropped open in surprise, and her eyes widened when she saw an old acquaintance, and Mercier, confused, calls her by name and addresses the girl as Nea. She runs up to her and takes her hands, saying that she heard about her return and came to meet her. Mercia smiles and says that they have not seen each other for a long time, and the main character stands nearby and watches this. Nea continues to hold Mercier's hands tightly and asks her friend why she returned so suddenly. The girl is about to tell everything, but suddenly Nea notices the boy and looks at him in surprise. The girl frowns a little and opens her mouth in surprise, not taking her eyes off the boy. He extends his hand forward and feels a little embarrassed by her persistent gaze, but suddenly Nea quickly comes up with something and exclaims that she understands everything. The girl blushes a little, raises her finger to her chin, and smiles slyly, saying that she brought a man with her. Mercia becomes even more embarrassed by her friend's words and waves her hands vigorously, trying to deny everything. Later they reveal everything to Nai, and the main character says that his name is Isagi, he is an alchemist. The girl repeats that he wants to make this village prosperous through alchemy, and adds that it's cool. Nai, smiling and closing his eyes, says that the boy seems like a good person to him. The girl warmly greets him and extends her hand for a handshake, and the boy looks at this in surprise. The girl with ears introduces herself as Nia. She covers one eye, smiles widely, and blushes a little, saying that she is Mercia's childhood friend. The girl smiles, firmly shakes the alchemist's hand, and shakes it energetically in different directions, greeting him. The boy looks at this in surprise, and Mercia looks displeased. He looks at his new friend with his mouth slightly open in amazement, and thinks that she is so hospitable to him. To a person, this impresses him. Nea, with a confident look, presses close to Mercia, slightly covers her mouth with her hand, and asks if she invited him. Mercia becomes very embarrassed, blushes, and confirms, asking what is wrong with that. The boy looked at the confused Mercia and embarrassed Nea in surprise, and mentally noted that earlier he thought, as if there were almost no secrets between him and Mercia, but still, the sudden change in her face clearly showed they really have a good relationship. The boy held his breath, looking at the girls who stood nearby with their backs to him, and felt that he really wanted to have such a close friend. Mercia becomes embarrassed because of her friend's words. He quickly walks away, saying that it's time for her to go. She wishes Isagi that his farm prospers, waves her right hand in farewell. Mercia also waves back, and Isagi watches her leave. Mercia shyly grabs the edge of her dress. Her face blushes a little. She apologizes to the boy, saying that her friend is very talkative, but the main character objects and says that he is glad she talked to them. After some time, the main character suggests to his girl to start working today. She adjusts her hair and asks in surprise if they are already starting, and the boy explains that he wants to check as soon as possible if it will be possible to harvest here. The main character thoughtfully placed his palm on his chin and recalled, yesterday he was weeding this plot while building the house, and now he needs to plow the land. The boy exclaims in surprise and sharply turns his head aside. Isagi says there is a stone here, it is in the way. The main character wants to use it as material. The girl silently watches his actions. Isagi places his hand on the boulder and carefully studies its composition. Suddenly, a magic circle appears around his palm. Using magic, he changes the shape of the stone, and it gradually takes the form of a human figure. Finally, a huge stone golem stands before the boy, and the girl, the main character, beams with joy. He succeeded, and Mercia looks at the created monster with surprise. Isagi holds a magical stone in his hands and, holding his breath, carefully examines it. He hesitates. Should he insert this stone, the source of power, into his own chest? Finally, the boy dares and inserts the stone in place. The main character joyfully clenches his fist and exclaims that the golem is ready. The golem's eyes light up with bright light. Isagi turns to it and orders it to move forward. The golem obeys and takes a step, and Mercia watches this in surprise. Without hesitation, the main character orders the stone golem to plow the land. To make the golem hear, he cups his hands like a megaphone near his mouth and shouts louder. The golem listens again and plows the land with 2 hoes. Misagi places his hand on his forehead to shield his eyes from the sun and better see his invention. He says that the flow of magical power is fine and is pleased with this, and the girl nearby smiles and notes that this golem could not be otherwise. Misagi created it. She says, I am going to spray herbicide over a large area. Suddenly, the voice of the village elder bursts out from behind the bushes. The man loudly calls the young man by name and asks what is happening. Mercia frowns slightly upon hearing his father's voice. She does not even turn to him, still angry, and the main character looks at the village head, who, stunned and suddenly seeing the golem, addresses him by name. Isagi explains that this is a golem created by alchemy for work in the field, assures that it will not attack people, and asks not to worry. The man crosses his arms confusedly and stammers a little, and Kelsey hesitates but admits that alchemy is really useful. The man thoughtfully touches his chin with his hand and asks the boy if it will be possible to grow a crop on this land. The boy looks at him with obvious surprise. Behind them, the golem continues to plow the land. The main character smiles broadly and says that the soil here is almost the same as in the Empire, so, in his opinion, everything should grow well, and Isagi carefully holds the seeds in his hands and notes that this is still just an assumption. The man frowns a little and, looking away from the main character embarrassedly, says, if this is true, then that's just wonderful, and behind him his daughter sprays herbicide on the plants. The boy thinks about Mercia and feels ashamed if she does not react to Kelsey at all. Then she is angry. The girl herself is busy with her own affairs and deliberately ignores her father. The main character takes a packet out of his bag and, excited about the tense atmosphere, says that he will now grow plants and invites the village elder to watch if he is interested. The main character smiles, holding a large bag in his hands, and says that if everything goes according to plan, they can immediately harvest, and the elder of the beastfolk village looks at him in surprise, not understanding what he is talking about. The man repeats to himself that he will be able to harvest immediately and does not believe his eyes. Then the boy takes the contents out of the sack and says that first he will scatter special fertilizers made thanks to alchemy. The main character explains, this raw material is a simple fertilizer used throughout the empire, but he did not just tweak or improve it, he made it much more beneficial for plants, and the man looks at him in surprise and does not understand anything. The girl realizes that her father understands nothing and remains silent. Mercier sighs and briefly explains to Kelsey, this fertilizer is made by alchemy to strengthen exhausted soil. She looks at him in surprise. The man, a little confused, says he understands, and the main character sighs with relief, watching the father and daughter. The girl apologizes to Isagi for making him worry, and the boy responds to her with a kind look. He smiles at her and says that probably there are some misunderstandings between them, but they still get along well. You can't replace family with anyone. Mercia looks at her father and agrees with the boy, confirming his words, and the man smiles back in response. The boy changes the subject, returns to the others, and loudly calls them to scatter the fertilizer. The golem has already finished and stands nearby. The girl standing next to her father supports the main character. They get to work. The girl pours the entire contents out of the sack. The golem digs with a hoe nearby, and the main character explains that the golem will mix the places where the fertilizer was scattered with the hoe, and then make beds with a shovel. The boy says that the seeds will be planted where the soil has already been prepared. the village elder addresses Sagi by name and asks if they should wait a bit before mixing the soil with fertilizer. The main character smiled and said that this usually happens, but his fertilizer significantly accelerates decomposition, so there is no need to mix everything. Thoroughly man froze in astonishment because of this. The girl with a calm expression closes her eyes and says that for Mr. Isagi this is not a problem at all. The man behind her smiles uncertainly, and Isagi himself is looking for something in his backpack and thinks that it seems the bar has been raised. The boy takes a bag out of his backpack and says that first they will plant plants that grow even in poor soil and are familiar to everyone. When he opens the bag, there is specially grown potatoes inside. The man leans over the beds he prepared and carefully places potatoes in the holes, saying he puts one tuber in each pit, then covers them with soil using a hoe. Then the boy grabs the bucket of water and confidently says that as soon as it is watered, it will grow and soon the harvest can be gathered. Isagi quickly pours the water into the holes. The girl behind him does the same. The man stubbornly insists on his point and hesitantly objects to the boy, saying you cannot grow up immediately, while the boy just looks at the village elder in surprise. He says that potatoes grow quickly, but still need 3 to 4 months. Suddenly plants begin to appear in the pits under his feet, and he looks down in surprise. They are growing right before his eyes. In an instant, ripe potatoes appear all over the field. The man, amazed, opens his eyes wide in his mouth, while the girl beside him smiles, watching the fruits of their labor. Potato is already fully ripe and ready for harvest. The main character holds an empty bucket in his hands, looks at it with satisfaction and joy, while the man behind him is stunned and cannot believe his eyes. The man turns to him and says that since the stems and leaves have already yellowed, it is time to harvest, but Kelsey is still looking at him with great surprise and cannot believe his words. The main character struggles to pull out a bush, frowns slightly, and asks, "How is this even possible?" Mercia and her father watch him closely. They hope the boy will succeed. Finally, the main character reaches his goal with his last strength. He pulls and uproots a potato tuber along with the bush from the ground. Isagi rejoices, smiles, and looks satisfied with his success. He joyfully exclaims that everything worked out. The boy holds the vegetable in one hand, leans on his side with the other, and says he believed in himself but still feels relieved. Mercia is also happy and congratulates him. The man holds another uprooted potato bush in his hand and loudly wonders that potatoes can be harvested on the same day, while the boy looks at him attentively. He says that his surprise is quite justified and suggests trying it. The girl advises preparing a simple dish in a frying pan, and Isagi suggests, since the weather is nice, to cook everything outside. After some time, they set the table. The girl focusedly peels the potatoes with a knife and cuts them. The man and the boy who were standing behind sit at the table, and the boy again takes something out of his backpack. The village head carefully examines a strange device with a magical circle drawn on top and asks Izzy what it is. The boy answers that it is a magical device that creates fire, and Kelsey repeats his words in surprise. The boy touches the round knob on the side of the device and turns it. Suddenly, a small light flared up on the magical circle. He explains, "If you press the button like this, fire will appear." The man opens his mouth wide in amazement, watching how fire emerges from nowhere. The boy calmly explains that by turning the lever, you can adjust the flame strength as you need. The man, with a surprised look and furrowed brows, says he has heard about convenient things in the city, but that there is a thing that can always easily ignite fire. It is hard to believe, and he spreads his hands to the sides, looking at the device on the table. The main character, with a calm face, quietly observes his great surprise. The village elder looks at him and asks if he made it himself, addressing him by name Isagi. The fire is still burning. The boy smiles, slightly closes his eyes, and happily explains to the village head that creating such magical things is also the work of an alchemist, while the man is still impressed and looks at him in amazement. The girl starts frying the potatoes in the pan, sharply turns on a strong flame, but looking at the future dish, realizes that she needs to add oil and fry on medium heat. She is confident as soon as the crust browns to golden, it needs to be flipped once more. Mercia smiles as she flips the potatoes, tossing them a few times in the pan while holding the handle. The girl covers the frying pan with a lid, and the main heroine and her father stand nearby, holding their breath and watching the cooking with anticipation. Kelsey holds cutlery in her hands, and Isagi holds an empty plate. The girl closes her eyes and smiles at them. Mercia decides to let it simmer for about 4 minutes on low heat, then she serves the portions. The girl, smiling, holds a tray with the finished food and says that everything is red-eyed potato sauté she just made is already on the set table. The man's mouth waters as he looks at the dish and tears well up in his eyes because this food was made by his daughter. The girl says that the only seasonings are oil, salt, and pepper, leaving the rest of the flavor to their choice. The boy spears a piece of potato with a fork and puts it in his mouth, chewing carefully. His eyes widen in surprise. The girl also tries the dish and blushes a little. The main hero smiles and says it is very tasty, continuing to chew the pieces of potato carefully, while the girl opposite says there are no questions about the taste. The village elder's mouth drops open in surprise. He looks at the finished dish, and after tasting the potato, could not believe it was much tastier than in their village. The man says that, strangely enough, he just has a lot of energy. He enthusiastically clenches his left fist. The boy looks at him in surprise and thinks that the beast has heightened perception. The main hero, with a calm face, says that this potato is actually enhanced. If you eat it, you will feel invigorated. The man wonders if that is even possible. Isaki says that despite his words, it hardly affects him. The man happily continues eating the delicious dish until the plate is completely empty. Mercia takes away the dirty dishes, and the man and boy remain outside. Kelsey thoughtfully puts her hand on her chin and asks the boy if the plants he improved with alchemy will take root in this village. The boy confidently replies, yes, of course, they will grow here. The main character, with a face glowing with inspiration and a confident voice, places his hand on his chest and says he will do everything to make it work for them, even if it seems impossible. No, because that is his job. The man next to him looks at him in surprise but says nothing. Isagi says for a stable harvest, he will expand his fields and grow other, improved plant varieties to have different crops for harvesting. Kelsey smiles calmly and thinks that she will make these lands fertile because she has the strength for it. The man loudly exclaims that he agrees with her, puts his hand on his side, and says that he trusts her with this matter. The boy, with a sincere voice, thanked him and said that from now on he would do everything little by little. The next day, he managed to sow other fields and plant tomatoes and carrots. Around his house, various plants grew everywhere. The fields became much larger. The boy and the girl stand next to the golem, and Isagi, a little embarrassed, admits that he feels awkward and asks Mercy if he is exaggerating. She agrees. The main character raises his hand to his forehead to shield his eyes from the scorching sun, gazes into the distance, and remembers how he once had to grow plants in the vast expanses of the palace. Knowing he had so much space, he was so happy that he even overdid it a bit. Isagi, apparently tired, pulls out another potato bush, breathes heavily, tries to catch his breath, while Mercia and Golem behind him help. The main character stands under the pole, wipes with his right hand, and sighs heavily, thinking about what to do with all this quantity. Maybe just hide everything in a magic bag. The girl approaches him with surprise, carrying a large harvest bag, and Isagi says they lack people and won't even manage to gather half by the end of the season. Mercia asks if it is possible to make another golem. The young man shyly smiles and says somewhat awkwardly that he cannot make any more because, unfortunately, he no longer has magical stones. Suddenly, the girl placed her hand on her chest and, shining with enthusiasm, suggested asking her father and mother for help. Mercia was sure they would definitely help them. The main character is told to wait a bit. The girl nods and adds that for now they will work with the golem. He leans on his side with one hand, raises the other up, his face showing an expression of suffering. He complains of pain in his lower back. Suddenly, the boy hears a girl's voice. Someone asks in surprise what this is. He turns that way and sees Nea. Yawning and a little confused, the boy looks at the surprised girl and greets her. Good morning. She opens her eyes wide in surprise, and covering her mouth with both hands, says that in their village there has never been such a large field. The main character takes off his hat and says, yesterday we grew plants using alchemy. The girl is amazed and says, only 2 days have passed since he arrived. With distrust in her voice, she adds that it is strange how anything could have grown on this soil at all, and even stranger that it is already harvest time. The main character smiles and says that it is all thanks to alchemy. The girl is a little irritated, tightly closes her eyes, and angrily exclaims that he always has the same answer for everything. Suddenly, she hears a voice from the side. Someone says that Isagi is telling the truth and addresses the girl by name. The boy looks surprised at the newcomers, and Nea turns around and sees Uncle Kelsey with surprise. The man with a whole ear of grain on his shoulder confidently says that yesterday he saw everything with his own eyes. Even in this village, crops are growing that Isagi changed, and next to him stand his smiling wife with a basket and daughter. A joyful spark lights up in Nea's eyes. She blushes a little. The girl clenches her fists and with an admiring smile says that since Uncle says so, it means it's true, and Nea thinks it's very cool. She turns to the main character and, with the same smile and shining admiration, suggests that the harvest is happening now. The main heroine is a little embarrassed by her too sharp reaction, but confirms the words and, smiling modestly, admits that she overdid it a bit with the sewing. The man is completely confused by surprise. Everything grew so quickly. He says he did not expect to see such a field in just one day. Isagi scratches the back of his head, is a little embarrassed, and sincerely apologizes, explaining that he just got carried away with joy. Kelsey says with relief that this is wonderful in their village, which previously suffered from hunger, so much crop has now grown. The village elders smile and assure him that everything will be fine, there is no need to worry. The wife also smiles at the boy and says that in their village such a rich harvest is for the first time, admits that she is even a little nervous. Naya stands nearby and says that she will also help gather the harvest, and the boy happily looks at his new friends. They constantly insist it's time for him to finally start gathering the harvest. Mercia and her mother smile as they gather pumpkins and squashes. Kelsey cuts a cabbage head with a sharp knife. The stone golem and the tired main character carefully pick beets. Over time, many baskets with various vegetables and fruits appear nearby, among which are eggplants and mother-in-law. You all sweaty, wipe your forehead and sigh heavily. Suddenly, Naya jumps out of the bushes and calls him by name, holding a tomato in her left hand. With the other, she points at him with a finger and, smiling, asks if she can try it. The main character smiled in response and said that, of course, she can try. The girl was very happy and exclaimed excitedly. The girl with ears enjoys bringing the tomato to her mouth and bites a piece. She blushes slightly, touches her cheek with her hand, and squints from the taste of the vegetable. The girl, her voice trembling with excitement, asks the main character what it is and enthusiastically says that it is very tasty. The boy glows with joy because of such a reaction. Naya adds that it is nothing like the tomatoes she knows. Isagi explains to her that these tomatoes not only grow much faster, but also contain more sugar. The girl exclaims with admiration and surprise that it is very cool, while Mercia, with a dissatisfied expression, peeks out from behind the bushes and watches them. The girl looks upset and says that it seems to her that they are having a good time together. You take the tomato with one hand and look at her, and the boy with the bitten tomato in his hand looks at her with surprise. Mercia takes another tomato and, calmly smiling, says that she will try it too. The main character gladly agrees without any doubts. The girl cheerfully bites the vegetable. Suddenly, Naya approaches from the side and supports her. The girl covers her mouth with her hand, reacting with amazement to such unexpected kindness, and Mercia frowns slightly and looks at her in surprise. Niall looks at his friend with a sly smile. Mercia's face turns red from this, as if she is about to boil over. Angry because of her friend's words, she irritably calls her name. The girl shouts "wait" and rushes after Naya, who is running away from her, loudly saying that she is angry. Isagi, standing aside, picks a tomato, and with a slight smile thinks that these two get along well. 3 days later, Mercia, the village elder with his wife, and the main character stand in a field near his hut, and Isagi says that the harvest is already finished and sincerely thanks everyone for their help. Kelsey asks the boy what he will do with his crop, and he, holding a bag in his hands and smiling broadly, says that he will give it to the villagers because if you leave everything in the magic bag, it will just stick together. Mercia's mother raises her left index finger and, with a sparkle in her eyes, suggests arranging a banquet. The main character looks at her in surprise and asks again about this banquet. She says with a joyful, big smile that it would be wonderful to treat everyone with dishes from your harvest, so everyone will get to know you, and living together will become much easier. Isagi hesitates a little because he thinks that a banquet is a lot of trouble, preparation, and all that hassle. He thoughtfully touches his chin and recalls palace banquets, and at that moment Mercia calls him by name. She explains to him simply and clearly. Although it is called a banquet, it is actually a regular meeting. It is enough to invite people to the central square and set up tables and chairs there, and the boy says he understands everything. The village head exclaims that he will now call the people and start preparations. He announces that there will be a banquet tonight, and the main character first agrees happily, then realizes with surprise the banquet is already today. After some time, the boy asked the girl if everything was ready, added that they need to hurry to the central square, nervously worried whether everything would go well, and Mercia could not understand why he was so anxious. Isagi says that he is a person and has just appeared here, and the man, overwhelmed with anxiety, asks her in an uncertain voice if people will come to his banquet. The girl says, although the banquet is scheduled for today, I am sure everyone will definitely come. The main character looks around the square in surprise. Mercia turns to him and confidently says, everyone will definitely come, such banquets have not happened for a long time. Isagi looks with surprise at the large number of people gathered behind the girl. Even small children are playing on the street. He is impressed by this crowd and watches with a smile, and Marcia is also happy. Suddenly, Mercy's mother's voice came from outside. She called Sagi by name and said she already wanted to start cooking. If he brings the groceries, he can help her. The boy agrees. He pours various vegetables from the magic bag onto the table. Eggplants, tomatoes, onions, pumpkins, and carrots. The woman is amazed so many vegetables. The mayor's wife smiles and says that they haven't used so many fresh products for a long time. She thoughtfully considers what to cook for the guests. The main character happily watches the cheerful crowd. All the inhabitants of the beast race were bustling, preparing for the holiday. Everyone was doing their own job, and Marcia with Nee and others were preparing ingredients for the dishes. When all the ingredients were already prepared and placed in the cauldron, Isagi began to fill the dish with his alchemical power. All the villagers of Pamenia watched this with excitement, and soon they lit a fire and the food began to cook in the cauldron. While the food was cooking, the beast folk carefully watched the cauldron and gradually added other ingredients, and Isagi watched with a smile. He was interested to observe how the food was being prepared. Soon all the dishes were ready, and when the villagers began to approach the table for food, Kelsey, Mercy's father, called Isagi, while the village head stood on the main stage. The man called the boy to come on stage for a moment. Isagi agreed to the village head's request. Kelsey addressed the villagers and sincerely thanked them for coming to the gathering, then explained. It was one story that made their village, which had always suffered from food shortages, now have abundance. Isagi became completely embarrassed. Upon hearing the man's speech, he felt ashamed. He did not expect at all that he would be suddenly brought out before the whole village. Isagi stood on the stage. At first, he was a bit confused by the unexpected introduction, but gathering himself, he still decided to say a welcoming word. Gathering his courage, Isagi introduced himself to them with a trembling voice, confessing that he was an alchemist and that he had come to their village only a few days ago, so he still knew little. The villagers smiled warmly upon hearing his uncertain and shy words. The boy noted that there were still plenty of ingredients, so the residents could eat as much as they wanted. Nair and Marcia smiled and watched with admiration as Isagi performed on the stage. After the unexpected acquaintance with the boy, the village head called on everyone to welcome the new resident named Isagi and drink to him, after which he raised a wooden mug with a drink in his hands. All the villagers joyfully raised their wooden mugs, smiles shining on their faces. They loudly greeted the boy, accepting him into their village, and then everyone happily finished their drinks to the bottom and continued celebrating. In the village of Pulminia, there was loud noise and laughter. Most of the residents with their families sat at festive tables. Everyone was happy because there had not been so much delicious food here for a long time. The boy walked down the street with festive tables set and awkwardly noticed that all the seats were taken. At each table, people were eagerly tasting various dishes, and cheerful chatter echoed throughout the village. Suddenly, a call to the boy came from afar. It was Mercy, who was already sitting at a festive table, and pointed to Isagi another free seat next to her and knee. When the boy approached their table, the girl smiled and said that she had already put food for him, and Isagi, hearing this, sincerely thanked Mercy for taking care of him. On his plate already lay patafu with vegetables, a thick, hearty soup with beef and vegetables, and Isagi, just looking at the dish, immediately rejoiced because it looked very appetizing. Then he took some patafu with a spoon and put it on his plate. Isagi looked at the dish with admiration. Marcia was pleasantly surprised by such attention. Nea was also pleased by the boy's admiring look. Isagi tasted the patafu with vegetables and was satisfied with the taste. Having tried the dish, he looked at the empty spoon with pleasure. Pat ofa with vegetables turned out to be really tasty. Sweet carrot and onion perfectly combined with the spicy black pepper, and it was incredible. Isagi felt pleasant tastes of potatoes, mushrooms, sausage, and many other ingredients in this dish open up in his mouth. Mercia watched as the boy ate potofai with vegetables with a smile. At that moment, Nea also tried the dish. The girl was delighted with the taste of the vegetable patefoi. With a sparkle in her voice, she told everyone that she had not tasted such a delicious vegetable soup for a long time, so Nea ate this dish with pleasure. It turned out that due to constant saving, they often had to eat even vegetable peels. Nai quietly agreed with Mercia, but was secretly glad that there was so much food on the table. Their conversation was overheard by a man from the beast race. He said with a sad, empty face that one day this holiday would end, and they would have to return to meager food again. The peasants who heard these words froze. This terrible news stunned them. At the banquet, no one wanted to listen or think about the assumptions that there might be a shortage of food again, but the peasant insisted, confident it was true, while Isagi watched all this with bewildered surprise. He realized that no one would change how some people think, so he did not reproach the man for his anxiety, but the other residents still somewhat despised him. Food supplies in every house of this village did not increase at all, and this unpleasant news upset the boy. The smile immediately disappeared from his face. Then the boy made a decision. Loudly, so that every villager could hear him, he began to calm them down. At that moment, Isagi rose from his place. The boy loudly told the inhabitants of Paminia that even they would be able to grow a crop from his specially bred seeds. All the peasants stopped eating and listened carefully to the boy. The man explained to them that these plants would thrive even on depleted soil, are not afraid of cold or diseases, so the surprised residents listened to his speech attentively and somewhat stunned. The gray-haired young man also promised to give all the residents seeds of these plants. Hisagi looked confidently at the people. Nea was petrified with surprise. The brown-eyed girl did not believe that even she could grow plants. Isaki did not object. He agreed with the girl. If Nei took good care of the seeds, she could also grow useful plants with tasty fruits. The girl beamed at this news. The villagers immediately began whispering after the boy's words, and the man who heard these words was deeply shocked. The man said aloud, and with disbelief that it seemed like a dream to him, the sudden offer from the boy to help increase the food supplies in their village Paminya stunned him. But the villager was still troubled by the fact that the boy named Isagi had appeared in their village quite recently, and the man could not understand why he was trying so hard for the fellow villagers, so he went and asked Isagi himself about it. Mercia was worried about Isagi. The man threw unpleasant words at him. The villager could not understand why a stranger like Isagi was working so hard for them, but the boy calmly responded to the rude question and showed no excessive emotions. Anger was visible only in the clenched fist, and then he spoke and told the man everything: how as a baby he was left near the church in the empire's capital. He turned out to be an orphan, and this greatly surprised the villager. Isagi did not stop telling the story of his life. He fought for the small crumbs of food that were given to him. The boy lived in constant hunger and endured hardships every day. The residents of the village Puminya were stunned by his sad story. Finally, Isagi explained to them that he knew what it was like to live without food. In simple words, the boy made them understand what it was like to be hungry and not have a lot of tasty food every day. That is why the boy smiled and asked them, "Doesn't every person dream of eating well to their fill?" Although he talked about his difficult childhood, he was not sad. The man froze. He was struck not only by the boy's sad story, but also by the fact that despite everything, he continued to sincerely smile at the world. He looked at Isagi with wide-open eyes. He awkwardly apologized to Isagi for doubting him, but the boy was not offended after all. If he were in the villager's place, he would have had the same suspicions, and Mercia looked at the blond boy with a smile. Then the villager decisively asked Isagi if he could share his seeds with him, because if Isagi had enough food, the man also wanted to ask for some seeds and try to grow something on his own. Suddenly someone raised their hand, and almost immediately other villagers picked up the same. After that man's request, other villagers began approaching Isagi. Everyone wanted to take seeds and try their hand at farming. Isagi froze when he saw people rushing for the seeds. A little frightened, he instantly calmed the villagers from Pumini, promising that there would be enough seeds for everyone, while Mercia watched this with a warm smile. No matter how strong or talented a person is, if they eat poorly, their heart hardens and they forget why to live. Even when Isagi became an alchemist, he still continued to study food. The boy was handing out seeds he had grown himself. The villagers lined up in a long queue for these packets, and he realized, before hunger, everyone is equal, so he did this so more people could overcome hunger. In that case, Isagi became even more passionate about developing farming in this world, and the boy looked confidently at the smiling villagers who had just received a bag of seeds. Among them, he recognized a familiar man who already had a large sack of seeds. Isagi understood. If the villagers had taken to the land earlier, there would be much more produce in Polmenia, while Kelsey meanwhile was handing out seeds to the villagers. Then the man with the sack of seeds called out again to all the inhabitants of Polmenia, loudly calling them and attracting all eyes to himself. The man realized that all this was happening so that the village would become richer, so he encouraged his fellow villagers. After all, this was their hope for a better life, and the villagers raised their mugs with drink upwards. It was already dark outside. Night had come, and the village was lit only by bright lanterns. The inhabitants of Polmenia rejoiced that they could make their lives better, so that evening with cheerful chatter they finished their drinks to the bottom. At that time, in the very heart of the Ramirez Empire in the imperial castle, the chief alchemist was reading a report on the growth of production of magical tools and items to a man older than him. Then that man addressed him by name Garius. It turned out that this boy was a true prince and first in line for the throne. His name was Vace Dreventure Remoris. He wanted to ask that man why there had been no report about Isagi this month. In fact, Prince Vace simply wanted to find out what Isagi was doing. The chief alchemist Garius froze. His mentor Weiss called that insolent commoner, and he could not answer the prince's question for several seconds. An awkward silence hung in the room. Then he explained to Prince Weiss that he had simply dismissed the commoner. That man considered himself merely a dependent. For several seconds the room froze in silence. The crown prince was shocked by this news, and he immediately asked why Isagi was dismissed. The man confidently told the prince that the alchemists of this empire create magical tools and items for the army, and Isagi only made the bare essentials. When Crown Prince Weiss Ramirez explained why Isagi was dismissed, he instantly became angry, called the long-haired man a fool, and struck the table so angrily with his fist that everyone in the office heard it. After all, that man had done them a real spite. Garius himself was surprised why the prince got so angry just because he dismissed the insolent commoner Isagi. To him, it seemed strange that Alchemist did not look special at all. Prince Weiss, clearly irritated, told Garius that they had hoped to solve the serious problem of food shortage in the empire with Asagi's new agricultural crops, so he entrusted this to her and allocated a larger budget. Garius, despite the prince's anger, called his side worthless with a trembling voice. The man could not believe that the research of a low-status boy turned out to be more important than creating magical weapons. But the angry voice of Prince Weiss Ramirez made him reconsider. The prince angrily asked the chief alchemist what he even saw in his subordinates besides their status, because, in the prince's opinion, Garius was not capable at all. The gray-haired man immediately shuddered. He finally realized how serious this was. The heir prince continued to look at the chief alchemist with a cold and angry gaze. Cold sweat streamed down Garius's pale face. The chief alchemist stood confused and did not know what to do next. After all, the heir prince was angry because of his actions. Prince Weiss, with a stern face and irritated voice, ordered the white-haired man to immediately find an alternative to food production. The supplies needed to be increased, after which the prince paused and stopped. Garius grew cold with fear before the crown prince's harsh anger, and anxiously waited to see if the master would come up with another way to solve this problem. After a short pause which made the man shudder even more, Prince Weiss loudly and irritably threw another condition at the chief alchemist. Garius either needs to return Asagi to him while the boy is busy with agricultural affairs. It was already dawn outside, and the gray-haired grandmother with a hoe in her hands thanked Asagi. It was thanks to him that this became possible. She did not expect anything to grow on such poor land, so the local resident was sincerely happy. Mercia and Asagi were delighted when the grandmother praised them for helping to grow the harvest. They smiled and said together that the most important thing for them was her happiness. Then the girl and the boy said goodbye to the gray-haired grandmother because they distributed seeds of specially bred crops to the residents of Palmenia. In the village of Palmenia, a real agricultural boom arose. All the residents rushed to grow the seeds that the boy brought them. Everyone worked in the field, helping to grow plants and fruits. The girl of the beast race said that if everything was calm, the village of Palmenia would be able to gather a generous harvest. Isagi agreed with her, but something surprised him. Isagi was very worried about something. He was completely thoughtful. Mercia noticed his anxiety, also got worried, and immediately wanted to find out what had happened. Then the boy explained to her that the fertilizer they are currently using, Asagi obtained by improving the imperial one, and if things continue like this, it will run out in just a few years. Mercia looked at the boy in surprise. Isagi did not stop talking, persistently explaining that because of this, they need new fertilizer that can be produced right in this village, and the girl continued to look at him with open surprise. Isagi thought they could buy imperial fertilizer from traveling merchants, but it is still better to make fertilizer from what is in the village. It will be much cheaper than paying merchants large sums of money. The girl finally understood. Pulling fertilizer from Asagi's pocket every time is only a temporary aid that will not solve the problem forever. After the words of the girl with black hair, Isagi decided to first collect the fertilizers that have long been used in the village of Palmenia and confidently informed Mercia about it. Mercia sincerely promised to listen to the last word of the boy. She will find out from the peasant family from Palmenia if they know anything about fertilizers and will ask these acquaintances to share them. After some time, the boy and the girl were already home. On their table lay only 3 types of fertilizers that they brought from the village, and Sugi sadly said that this was very little. The rural land was so poor that few engaged in farming there. But this was enough to lay a strong foundation for the new fertilizer Asagi, and to make it even better, ingredients with greater magical power living in this village would be needed. Hearing this, Mercia smiled and told the boy that it was better to go to the forest. There one can find the necessary raw materials with magical power, and Isagi was a little surprised by such a proposal from the girl. Then Mercia explained to him, only in the forest will they be able to find all the necessary natural materials that are nowhere else. The girl pointed to the window, and suddenly a forest opened before them. Isagi understood that it was here that the needed raw materials could be found. So Isagi decided to go there with a confident smile. The boy had long wanted to go to the forest for materials for the village himself, but suddenly stopped and did not finish this thought. Suddenly the girl whispered to him, "I will also go with you to the forest." The boy froze in shock. Her words that she also wanted to go there stunned him. She assured him that she had been in this forest more than once and would be nearby as a guide, so gathering materials would be easy, but he still worried that the forest might be too dangerous for the girl. Trying to cheer him up, Mercia told the boy to calm down and then firmly grabbed her mop. Mercia calmly said that she, after all, was only a maid. The girl confidently said this, holding the mop in her hands as if it were her weapon. Isagi just looked surprised at the dark-haired girl. He could not understand what relation the status of a maid had to her safety. It turned out that maids need strength to protect their master. Isagi froze a little in surprise, hearing that maids need to know how to fight to work. then he only awkwardly accepted the news that Mercia really knows how to fight. After some time, the boy and the girl were already in the forest. Isagi admired the beauty around with delight, while the girl, long accustomed to these places, saw nothing strange in it. They moved further. The boy, full of curiosity and admiration, observed the animals in the forests of the village Pulminia. Mercia walked ahead, showing him the way like a guide. Isagi, looking closely at this forest, noticed that the plants here were somewhat different from those growing in the empire, probably because this was the territory of the animal kingdom, and he asked the girl with black hair about it. Mercia quietly and confidently explained to him that in nature there is a cruel struggle for survival, so this was normal for them. Animals and plants can change instantly. While the girl enthusiastically explained how the animal world differs from the plant kingdom, Isagi suddenly noticed a bush. They were very close, and the boy was incredibly interested. It turned out that star-shaped fruits grew on that bush, and the boy was so curious that he reached out to touch them. Mercia's words stopped him in his tracks. The girl warned that as soon as he touched the fruit of this plant, acid would be released from it, so Isagi immediately pulled back his hand and felt fear. The boy was embarrassed. Only now did he realize that he should have looked more carefully at the plants first, not touch them right away. Mercia knew that sometimes dangerous plants like this one occur in the forest. Alchemists could study any substance. The boy frowned for a moment, then opened his eyes wide and immediately used his skill to examine the bush with fruits. This plant is called carambola. It hides in the forests in the south of the animal world. Squeeze its fruit on the tree and acid immediately squirts out. If this acid gets on the skin, rinse the area with water immediately and start treatment right away. The girl thought about how to approach this plant. Isagi wanted to collect the woody fruits of the carambola. He thought they could be a good raw material for creating strong acid and a weed killer. Mercia decided to help the boy gather these fruits. She grabbed a thick cloth and together with him, began carefully removing the fruits from the tree, placing them in the cloth so that the acid would not get outside since it was released only when the fruits were touched with bare hands. The girl tightly squeezed the fruit in a thick towel, and Isagi easily cut it off the carambola plant with small scissors. After that, the boy began to collect raw materials from the fruits on the trees. He carefully pierced the carambola with a needle, collected the sour juice in a test tube, and put everything into his magic bag, while Mercier helped him nearby. Isagi wiped the sweat from his forehead with his hand, looking tired. Then the boy said aloud that training was actually a very interesting and fun activity for him. Mercier, hearing these words, asked Isagi about gatherings in the Empire, and from his words, the girl immediately understood that such things were not very allowed in the Empire. The boy nodded. She was right. He was always told that collecting necessary materials was better entrusted to knights or adventurers. Although he managed to work with the materials, the boy still wanted to talk a little but suddenly fell silent. Suddenly the girl screamed, calling her master. Isagi turned pale, froze in horror, and looked fearfully to the side. But suddenly a terrifying monster burst out in front of them. It resembled a huge boar, only much larger than a normal one, and the boy and girl quietly tried to move away from this beast. They looked tiredly at the large boar that suddenly appeared nearby, and Isagi quietly whispered to the girl about this scary beast. Then Mercier told him that this huge, beast-like boar was a real demon. This demonic monster was fiercely evil and could instantly attack anyone with its large, sharp tusks. Suddenly the terrible demon lunged at them with its mouth wide open, saliva flying everywhere, and large, sharp tusks ready to bite and attack. Isagi tensed and was scared because of the seriousness of the situation. The boy with the pale face was afraid of what they would have to do to avoid the attack and injuries from this real monster. Suddenly the girl calmly addressed him, and the boy somewhat composed himself, wet from head to toe, and looked straight at her. Then she told him to trust her. The girl wanted to handle the monster herself, and Mercier confidently stood before the boy. This frightened and stunned Isagi, and he wanted to stop the girl. Meanwhile, a huge boar was rapidly approaching them. Like the scariest monster itself, this demonic creature wanted to attack the boy and the girl. The giant boar madly rushed toward the girl. Mercier was preparing to face this monster. Isagi stood nearby, tensely watching her. But when the demonic monster approached and tried to attack the girl with black hair, she instantly disappeared from his sight, so his sharp fangs did not touch her. The demonic monster, confused by her sudden disappearance, began to anxiously turn his head searching for prey, while Isagi with a tired look stood nearby watching the demonic boar. Suddenly the demonic monster raised his head and noticed something that made his beastly eyes widen for a moment in surprise, and the silhouette of the girl flashed on his face. She was right above him. It turned out the girl was hanging right above the demon. Mercier jumped and did a somersault right in the air. The huge boar noticed this and rushed forward, trying to dodge the attack of the black-haired girl. But Mercier, lightning fast, doing several somersaults in the air, almost immediately approached the demon monster fleeing from her, and clenched her fist, preparing to strike the boar that resembled a beast. The girl rushed at the demon, raised her fist, and preparing to hit the stunned creature resembling a boar, she rushed to deal with the monster, because for her the most important thing was to protect Isagi. The girl approached the demon monster and punched him right in the snout. The boar-like beast did not even have time to turn away from her blow, he could only take the full force of the hit. Her blow was so powerful that the demonic boar flew several meters and crashed right into a tree, and Isagi barely managed to jump aside so that the enraged beast would not fall on him. After the girl punched the monster with her fist, she calmly and confidently watched as the demonic boar flew several meters away. The monster was defeated, and the safety of East Side was no longer under threat. Isagi was simply frozen with amazement. Mercia had knocked down such a terrifying and huge demon with one blow, and he looked at the boar, which the black-haired girl had taken down, with eyes wide open in surprise. Then Mercia explained to him that she would not allow her master Isagi to waste time on unnecessary troubles because of such matters. After the fight with the wild boar, the girl calmly shook the dust off her maid outfit. Isagi knew that beast people were physically stronger than other races, but Mercy's combat power was much higher than the usual level. This made him momentarily doubt whether she was really just a servant, so he decided to ask her. Hearing the boy's question, Marcia quietly replied that she really was a servant, then paused for a moment, choosing her words. Mercier continued answering Isagi's questions, explaining that the girl, as a representative of the beast race, could only serve in the imperial castle because she possessed great combat strength. That was why Mercia had a bunch of different night jobs. She agreed to them because she could see perfectly in the dark, and her appearance as a maid often puzzled people. Sometimes thieves tried to attack her. The boy smiled warmly at the black-haired girl and thought that in this empire, where beast races were disliked, more was always expected from them. Suddenly, the girl remembered how recently at work she was constantly urged to take on some suspicious task, so Mercio sighed with relief that she managed to get free along with Isagi, and the boy was impressed to hear about this dark job. Isagi looked at Mercia and quietly said that it was thanks to her and other guards that a man like him could live peacefully in the castle. Hearing his words, the girl looked at the boy in surprise. What he said impressed her. Agi was still speaking, and he sincerely thanked his comrade for everything, both for what had already been done and for what was still being done for him. The boy looked at Mercia with a grateful smile. She was deeply impressed by his sincere words of gratitude. She froze in silence for a moment and could not immediately respond. Mercia smiled awkwardly and blushed, quietly saying that the night watch was also a servant's duty, so everything was fine, and with these words she wanted to show that it was not difficult for her at all. Mercy blushed and looked away, but not at the boy. Her true emotions were shown by her black tail, which was wagging in all directions, and Isagi thought that what this girl sometimes did was usually done by knights. Suddenly the boy switched to another topic. Something caught his attention. Isagi remembered that the demon's body should have a magical stone. Mercia heard about this for the first time and knew nothing about that stone. Then Isagi explained to her that the magical power the monster draws from the air and during hunting gathers in its magical stone, and alchemists take these stones and make various things from them. After that, he approached Bora's body. Without hesitation, the boy confidently felt the demon's body, trying to sense how magical energy flowed through it and precisely determine where the magical stone of this boar was hidden. After some time, Isagi placed his palm to understand exactly where the boar released the magical flow, and it turned out that it came from somewhere in the neck of this demonic creature. The boy felt it with his hand. Then Isagi rummaged in the magical bag and soon pulled out a dagger, after which he aimed it directly at the place where the magical energy flow passed through the boar. When the boy and the dark-haired girl cut the monster's skin where the magical power passed, something incredible and very strange opened before them. Isagi looked at it with surprise. Before them appeared a magical stone of a beast-like boar. It was huge, and the power inside was of exceptionally high quality. This monster became a truly great catch for them. But the girl thought differently. She said that this demonic monster, although it looked huge, was considered only medium-sized in this forest. Her words deeply impressed the boy. In the Empire's capital, you hardly ever meet monsters larger than a human palm, but here, in these parts, even giant creatures seem commonplace, so Isagi asked Mercia how many monsters lived near the village of Paminia. Mercia thought for a moment, then told Isagi that if they didn't reduce the number of monsters from time to time, a pack of beasts would attack their village Paminia, and this surprised Isagi greatly. He finally had a wonderful chance to gather a bunch of magical stones of excellent quality. Now it had become quite real for him. Isagi, full of enthusiasm, decided to use these magical stones as a base for new fertilizer. This way they could do everything much faster than with raw materials that were only slightly infused with magic. Then the girl, with a sparkle in her eyes, suggested to the boy to collect many magical stones from monsters resembling beasts. Isagi readily agreed, and they set off together to find the next monster to obtain these stones. But their search for the next monsters was momentarily stopped by the girl. Before setting off together to search for monsters with magical stones, Mercia wanted to say something to Asagi, and the boy looked at her and waited for her to continue. Turned out that the girl wanted to take with her the meat of a demon like a boar, which she had defeated since the meat of demonic monsters was incredibly tasty, and upon hearing this, Mercia already went down to the boar's body. The boy understood her request and apologized, because at that time, Asagi was only thinking about gathering materials for fertilizer, while Mercia needed some time to obtain the meat of the demonic boar. Then Mercia began to clean the monster. While the girl was cutting the boar, the boy took a wooden barrel from the magical bag, and Asagi realized that this place really did not resemble an imperial castle at all. To survive, they had to search for and obtain food on their own. For example, Mercia was now seriously and carefully dissecting the carcass of the demonic boar. Next to her on the ground lay various tools, axes and knives for chopping up the carcass of an animal resembling a boar. There was also a bucket for cleaning various liquids, and the girl immediately put all the meat into the wooden barrel. The boy noticed that, as before, he was only stocking up on materials and fulfilling others' requests. He watched as Mercia processed the carcass of the huge boar. Then Asagi called the dark-haired girl, distracting her from working with the boar. After the call, Asagi looked at the girl and asked her to teach him how to dissect the carcass. Mercia heard his request and approached the hanging boar carcass, standing next to it to make it easier to divide. For a moment, Mercia froze in amazement. The boy suddenly asked to be taught how to disassemble the monster's carcass, and she looked at Asagi with surprise. And in the next moment, the girl smiled warmly at the boy and immediately agreed to teach him how to process the carcass. Soon their small pouch was filled to the brim with magical stones. The work was done. Mercia suggested Asagi return to the village. Nearby lay the bodies of the defeated monsters, and the boy realized there were enough magical stones to make new fertilizer. The boy wanted to return to the village and took a step forward. Suddenly, Asagi felt something under his foot, so he stopped and did not go further to the village. Vogki dropped to one knee and looked at his palm in surprise. It was covered with patches of soil on which he had just stepped. The boy noticed how the soil in the forest was slowly changing, and at that moment realized they had gone quite far into the forest. That was why the boy did not want to return to the village. Asagi wanted to explore the forest even deeper. He told this to his partner. Mercia was just wiping the knives after dismembering the demonic monsters. Then the boy pointed to a mountain far from them. Asagi curiously asked the girl if there was ore on that mountain. Hearing the question, the girl looked toward the mountain. She told him that ore was indeed mined on that mountain, but Mercia was worried that if they went for the ore immediately, it would take too much time. But the boy was fine. Asagi gently calmed the girl and explained that thanks to alchemy, he could roughly determine where the ore deposits lay, so it would not take as much time as she thought, and Mercia immediately stopped worrying. The boy confidently gazed at the distant mountain. If there were really ore deposits there, Asagi could create more golems and build more buildings, and he really wanted to check this. Asagi joyfully told his comrade that it was time to set out to search for ore. The ore deposits awaited them in the mountains very close by. After some time, they finally reached the desired mountain. Along the way, they walked a narrow path right on the slope, and the girl, worried about the boy, asked if he was okay. Isaki told her that everything was fine, but inside he was terribly anxious and afraid. The mountain path was too narrow, and there was a real danger of slipping and falling straight into the abyss. This path was difficult for him. The boy was very nervous, and from fear of falling off the narrow mountain trail, cold sweat ran down his face. Meanwhile, Mercia walked the narrow path easily and fearlessly, no difficulties. It was very simple for her. The boy mentally envied a little that she moved so deftly, even in her maid's outfit. Suddenly, the girl, without hesitation, jumped off the narrow path straight down, flew over all the winding descents, and noticeably shortened her route. Isagi could not jump like that girl, so he had to descend and make his way along the narrow, dangerous paths himself, and when the tired boy approached her, Mercia hinted to him that there was an underground passage nearby. The boy was breathing heavily. Fatigue and tension pressed due to the danger of the narrow mountain paths. The difficult descent and narrow road made Asagi all sweaty and completely exhausted, but eventually they reached the desired place. Then the boy and the girl entered the underground passage they needed, and Isengi immediately noticed that it was already quite old. Mercia explained that this passage was dug a long time ago, so it was gradually wearing out. Sagi, examining the construction of the underground corridor, realized that the earth reinforcement by burning generally protected against the collapse of the ceiling and walls, and although the wooden beams were already old, they still held the ceiling well. Then he asked the girl for permission to patch up the worn part of the underground passage. Mercia, of course, did not object. The boy raised his palm and activated his magical power at that moment. A large magical circle appeared near the entrance to the underground passage. and then Isagi, using alchemy, rebuilt and reinforced the entire underground passage. Soon he managed to do it. The underground passage was reinforced, and now it could be explored and ore deposits searched for in it. When the passage was fortified, Marcia led the boy inside, and Isagi stood and waited until she stepped into the passage first. She walked a little ahead, leading him straight to the underground crossing, while he carefully examined everything near the entrance, paying special attention to the very appearance of this crossing. Entering inside, Isagi sadly noticed that the underground passage was too dark for him. He felt upset, because in this darkness, he would not be able to see well how it was arranged and orient himself properly in it. Isagi suddenly remembered that beast people see perfectly in the dark, so the girl could calmly walk through the underground corridor, and Marcia, noticing this, immediately apologized to the boy she forgot to give him a lamp so he could light the way in the dungeon. In this case, the boy himself took a lamp out of his magic bag, turned the button on it, and the light lit up. It was thanks to the stone inside the lamp that it illuminated the underground passage. The warm light of the lamp gently illuminated the passage. Then Isagi decided to move further along the underground corridor, lighting the way with the lamp. In fact, it was a magical device in the form of a lamp. Marcia looked at this thing with obvious surprise. The girl decided to carry the magical device herself because Isagi had to concentrate on searching for ore. The boy sincerely thanked her for the help. After some time, they found themselves in a deep underground tunnel. The girl walked ahead, carrying the lamp that lit their way, and Isagi carefully inspected the mine in search of any ore deposits. Soon the boy, thanks to his alchemical sense, was able to determine the place where an ore deposit might be hidden. He pointed with his finger where they should move next. After that, the boy approached the stone wall of the underground passage, placed his palm on a certain spot, and calling upon his alchemical power, felt something inside. It was here in the stone wall of the underground passage that rich ore deposits were hidden. The boy, with a sparkle in his eyes, told his companion about it. Marcia held the lamp in her hand and illuminated the passage. But then she threw the lamp somewhere and suddenly pulled out a pickaxe, as if from thin air. The girl was already about to dig the ore, but Isagi said it was not necessary. After all, the boy could extract the ore from the wall in another way, explained all-in-water Marcia. If alchemy can enhance the properties of a substance by passing a flow of magical energy through it, then the material can be made much more fragile. The boy pressed his palms to a certain spot on the stone wall of the underground passage. At that moment, a magical circle appeared in that place, because if you press on a weak spot in the wall, everything will work out. To remove the stone wall in the underground passage, Zagi used alchemy, and at that moment, a magical circle flared up on the wall, beginning to expand. In a moment, the needed ore easily appeared at the site of the ruins, where the magical circle had recently shown. Seeing this, Isagi asked the black-haired girl to collect the pieces of ore that had fallen to the ground. After that, the boy again pressed his palm to the stone wall of the underground passage. Isagi wanted to return to his work and continue extracting ore from the deposits. The boy quickly found the deposits and immediately noticed them at that moment. Several magical circles he created with alchemy flared up on the stone wall, so he aimed and hit the ore precisely. Marcia froze with amazement when she saw this. The girl almost gathered all the paddles that had fallen from the wall of the underground passage into her bag. But already in a moment, ores began to rapidly emerge from the places marked by magical circles. Isagi instantly rushed forward, searching for new places with ore deposits. From under the broken stone walls, various pieces of ore were still falling and crashing onto the floor. Suddenly, Isagi called Marcia, and the boy froze, turning to the black-haired girl. It turned out that Marcia wanted the boy to slow down a bit in searching for ore. Her legs were already submerged up to the knees in that ore, and Isagi, realizing his mistake, immediately apologized to the dark-haired girl, impressed by her condition. After some time, the girl managed to get out from under the pile of a large amount of ore. Isagi explained that they would sort the collected ore and extract it right here, and Marcia agreed and obeyed. Then the boy sat on the floor next to the dark-haired girl and carefully and attentively examined each piece of ore. Meanwhile, Marcia calmly awaited his conclusions, sorting through piles of ore, and nearby stood a lamp that illuminated everything well around. Soon the boy realized that they had come across a real treasure trove, many different ores: iron, copper, lead, even magical, a bit of gold and precious stones. Isagi carefully examined the stones from various ores, but, as the boy expected, neither adamantite nor mithril was found in the mined ores. The girl smiled coldly. She did not expect anything else from the mysterious Sagi, and the boy, struck by her unexpected words, did not understand what she meant and looked at Marcia with confusion. The girl enthusiastically explained to him that such drilling technology would be in high demand in many industries. With her words, she vividly emphasized Isagi's outstanding abilities. Isagi explained to her, alchemists were actually sent to special rooms for extraction, but living there was unbearable among the nobility. This was called true penal servitude. Isagi was indeed often sent there. The boys' faces darkened when they remembered it. The hard work there was a real horror. Mercier became worried, noticing how the boy's mood had changed. But in a moment, the boy pulled himself together and calmed down, trying to forget the unpleasant memories of that place. After all, Isagi had to start processing the obtained ore right now. Then the boy extended his open palm directly to this layer. Thus Usagi sought to transfer his magical power to him. After that, his magical power touched the ore, and from an ugly lump, it instantly turned into an ingot. The ore completely changed its structure, so in one day the girl received one such processed ingot. The surface was so even and smooth that it reflected an image as if in a mirror. The girl looked at the processed ore ingot with surprise. The boy did not stop. He processed one ore after another, pushing himself to do it faster, and the girl, recovering from the shock, shook herself and began to help him. Soon the boy and the girl silently resumed work. Isagi was busy processing the obtained ore, and the girl calmly waited, occasionally helping him. After some time, almost all types of ore had already been smelted. Several ingots of different sizes lay on the floor, and the boy, looking at the result, decided that it was time to leave the underground tunnel. The girl asked the boy if they had mined a lot of ore from this mountain. In fact, they had gathered quite a lot of ore. Isagi was confident that from such an amount, a bunch of useful things would come out. The boy was happy that he could create even more golems, and Isagi also beamed with joy. He would be able to strengthen the main field and make more convenient agricultural tools to get a bigger harvest. Isagi was on cloud nine not only because he created these things, but also because now he could create them. The girl did not understand what he was talking about, so she asked him again. Isagi immediately turned to the girl with black hair and looked at Mercio with obvious satisfaction. The boy did not answer her question. Soon they were already in the village. The boy and the girl stood on an empty plot near their house, and it was there that Isagi enthusiastically told the dark-haired girl that he wanted to make his workshop right there. The girl looked at him in surprise and asked again about the master class. Isagi explained to her that if something went wrong during the alchemical processing, there could be an explosion that would destroy the entire building, and a strong smell appears during the work. That is why he wanted the workshop separate from the house. Mercia sincerely extended her helping hand. She offered to solve this issue together, even help with building the workshop, but Isagi refused and said he would manage on his own. The boy changed the subject and told Marcia that the second harvest season had already begun, so she would be very helpful if she worked together with the other villagers in the field, and Marcia listened to his words. The boy had already turned away from Marcia, who was walking away. The girl, with a basket in her hands, headed to the field to help the fellow villagers gather the second season's harvest. Left alone, Isagi barely restrained himself. A lot of work awaited him in building the workshop, so he was eager to start as soon as possible. At first, he wanted to decide on the size of the workshop. He walked back and forth, trying to understand with his steps how it should be. Isagi imagined a very large workshop. But the large workshop would be difficult to maintain and service, so the man abandoned this idea and, taking a tape and stakes, determined the dimensions of the future house. Isagi suddenly realized his workshop did not need any partitions. One workplace and a storage room were quite enough for him, and the boy began to unwind the tape. Soon the boy had already circled and driven stakes. The plot for his future workshop was marked. It turned out to be roughly as he imagined, and even a bit larger than the site for his house. After some time, the boy brought materials for the workshop there, prepared wet wood for building the house, and brought bricks to strengthen the structure. Now he needed to make mortar. Then the boy took out a wooden box and placed it on the ground. Next, he poured cement and sand from a cloth bag into the box, maintaining the ratio, 1 part cement to 3 parts sand. Isagi resorted to alchemy, and with one motion instantly transformed the mixture into a single mass, drew a magic circle on the box with cement and sand to ensure everything mixed thoroughly. Then he made a hole in the middle of the box and slowly poured water in, stirring the mixture all the time. When all the lumps dissolved and the mass became thicker, everything was ready. Soon the paste in the wooden box was finally ready. As expected, it turned out thick and without any lumps. The boy began laying bricks along the outer wall, doing it all with his magic, and immediately after that covered the bricks with cement using a magic circle. Then Isagi, covering them with cement, began laying bricks on top again, and then simply methodically repeated the same movements, laid bricks and sealed them with cement. Soon Isagi's workshop was almost ready. He had already done the main work, only the roof remained to be finished. The boy looked at his workshop. Isagi was already sweating from working on the workshop. Noticing the almost finished structure, the boy noticed one thing. Even just laying the bricks, a pleasant atmosphere was already lingering in the workshop. Then the boy wondered what to do next. He took up work again and continued building his workshop. He wanted to do the interior decoration of the workshop. Soon the girl with a basket in her hands returned from the field. She had just finished helping other villagers harvest the crops. Marcia walked forward, not looking at her feet. Then the girl turned to the workshop and called the boy. She wanted to find out how his workshop construction was progressing. And at that moment the girl finally saw the boy's workshop, and Mercier, seeing that building, froze for a moment and looked at it with admiration. Finally, a beautiful tall brick house appeared before her, simple and unpretentious, but so cozy and attractive. Near it were boards in a box, clearly indicating that the house had just been completely built. Then the girl headed to the new workshop. Already on the street, she heard the boy's voice, and Usagi was delighted. Now they had a real room, like an alchemist's laboratory. Mercier quietly knocked on the workshop door and asked Usagi for permission to enter. The boy, although busy, still heard her voice and immediately invited her in. Then the girl opened the door to Usagi's workshop, but had not yet stepped inside. Mercier froze on the threshold for a moment, because what she saw in the room really impressed her. Before the girl opened a bright room with windows. Inside there was already a table with alchemical instruments. Open boxes lay on the floor, and Usagi was busily arranging things around the room. He awkwardly raised his eyes to the frozen girl, and Usagi gently explained to her that he was simply engaged in interior design. Marcia looked at the boy with admiration and remained silent. She praised the boy for how beautiful the house looked. The workshop was beautiful not only outside, but inside everything was tastefully decorated, and Usagi blushed at these words. He was very pleased to hear such compliments from the girl. Then the boy, full of delight, began to incessantly tell her how he built his workshop. He changed the ratio of wood resin, and the walls became less bright and stopped reflecting. When Usagi did this, the rooms were flooded with warm, pleasant light for the eyes. He, filled with excitement, continued to talk about his workshop. The boy wanted to add the spirit of antiquity to the house and laid one of the walls with bricks. Isaki listened with admiration to his story about arranging the workshop, and Mercy quietly sat and smiled warmly, looking at him. The girl, smiling warmly, sincerely congratulated the boy. The construction was finally completed. Finally, he had the perfect workshop for research and experiments. Mercia was genuinely happy for him. Sagi, smiling, accepted the girl's congratulations and thanked them, then approached Mercy so closely that she blushed, but he, despite this, cheerfully announced that now he could research as much as he wanted. From his closeness, she became embarrassed, blushed, and instantly looked away. Shyly, she offered to help the boy with rearranging the furniture. Isagi agreed to accept her help. Suddenly, the boy remembered. Isagi asked the girl with black hair to put a bed in his workshop so he could take a little nap. But Mercia immediately and decisively refused to give him a bed in the workshop. The boy was shocked by her instant refusal and immediately wanted to find out why she said no. Then Mercier gloomily explained to him that if a bed was placed in his workshop, he would start sleeping there constantly to avoid hassle, and the girl understood that he would simply become lazy and stop coming into the house. Sagi froze at her explanation. He had no argument to deny it, so he only agreed with the words of the black-haired girl. But Mercia was stubborn precisely about this here. She did not yield to Isagi at all, and the boy realized that she saw right through him. The boy was going to ask the girl not for a bed, but for something else. But Mercia already guessed what he was going to ask. She refused him and did not allow a sofa to be placed in the workshop. Mercia pouted and resolutely said that she was doing all this for the sake of the boy's healthy lifestyle, indignantly added that he must sleep properly at home. Sagi, a little embarrassed, conciliatorily agreed with the offended Mercia. He had to admit that spending the night in the workshop was not going to work. The boy instantly changed the subject so that the black-haired girl would not press further, and suggested immediately starting to make fertilizer. Mercia decided to help him. To make fertilizer suitable for the soil in the village of Paminia, they rummaged in the local forests and mines in search of materials, and Isagi suddenly remembered the demonic boar and the underground passage with ore. And finally that day they decided to create a new fertilizer. The boy carefully held a plant in his hand and placed it on the table where all the necessary materials were already lying, and Mercier handed him a drawing board. At first, they would need 3 types of fertilizer, the same ones that the villagers of Paminia had used before. The boy looked at the 3 bags of fertilizer lying on the table. Then Isagi asked Mercia what results had been achieved after improving the properties of the 3 types of fertilizer from the village of Paminia, and the girl began to report. The girl informed him that the fertilizers from the village of Plumen were still worse than the imperial ones. She had simply read this in a document. All the details of the course of affairs were collected in one document, which Mercier was squeezing in his hands, and then handed to Isagi for him to familiarize himself. Isagi, carefully reviewing the document, noticed that the restrictions applied only to the current fertilizer. The boy examined the tables with data on the document, and a serious expression froze on his face. He reasoned that it was probably better to mix this fertilizer with some other raw material. Mercia, hearing his reasoning, replied that this would take them a lot of time. The boy realized if they started making fertilizer from scratch, it would take several years or even more. But their document already contained all the necessary information and data about imperial fertilizers. Moreover, they had quite a few quality magic stones. The boy smiled and showed the black-haired girl the stone they got from the monsters. Therefore, he was not worried at all. The girl looked closely at the wet stone with curiosity. After all, they found these magical stones from monsters in the forest, so she did not think they were of such good quality, but the boy assured her that these magical stones were very good. Then he told her that in the capital of the empire, such a magic stone costs as much as 20 silver coins, and Mercio froze with amazement. They really are that expensive. In their village Paminia, magical stones usually cost only 1 silver coin, so Isagi was so stunned by the price that he dropped the stone from his hands. Still barely recovering from the shock, the boy called the girl with black hair. Then he asked her in disbelief about the magic stones, whether this was really such a common thing in her village Paminia. The girl nodded thoughtfully. Magical stones were indeed a common thing in their village, and she added that everyone here had at least one magical stone. Hearing this news, Isagi was even more surprised. He accepted her words with a saddened voice. Seeing that the boy was upset by her words, Mercia looked at him in surprise. The boy immediately regained consciousness, and smiling at his reflection in the magic stone, thought that he would still turn it into excellent fertilizer. Isagi confidently told his interlocutor about this. Then they got back to work. First, Isagi wanted to add a magic stone to the fertilizer, so he asked Mercy to prepare pots for the experiment, and the girl agreed and went to fulfill his request. Meanwhile, Isagi finally decided to put his magic in order. He grabbed the magic stone and it instantly flew into the air. To make the chaotic magical power of the stone more obedient, the boy had to align it. The stone in his hands began to release magical energy. At that moment, the magical stone sharply rose even higher. Magical energy burst from it. Isagi confidently controlled the flow of this magical power in the stone. After some time, the magical energy in the magic stone calmed down and organized itself, so Isagi purified the stone from foreign impurities using alchemy. Soon everything was ready. Above his palm, the purified and impurity-free magic stone quietly hovered in the air. Isagi smiled with satisfaction, looking at the magic stone ready for use. When the magic stone was already cleaned and put in order, Mercia approached the boy with a pile of pots, and Isagi thanked the dark-haired girl for bringing the pots. Grill became interested in the magic stone that Isagi had processed. It was different from the others. It was cleaned of all impurities, and Mercy carefully examined the stone. The girl froze. The processed magic stone was incredibly beautiful. It emitted a pure purple glow, and Isagi explained that in the Empire some aristocrats even wore such stones as jewelry. Mercy looked admiringly at that magic stone. It was truly beautiful, and the girl wondered how else such magic stones could be used. After some time, Mercy, clutching her heart in horror, watched as the boy mercilessly crushed and mixed these such beautiful magic stones with fertilizer, and Isagi did not care about their beauty at all and simply destroyed them. But the boy, seeing her upset face, did apologize to the dark-haired girl. After all, she was so fascinated by the beauty of the magic stones, and Mercia was a little upset that they were destroyed. The girl said to the boy in a calm, though somewhat pressed voice, that the magic stone is just a thing, so she would not be upset about it, but looking at the pots, her eyes were sad. Then the girl quickly went to bring Isagi more pots. The boy, still grinding the stone, nodded in agreement, and Isagi, watching her leave, still did not calm down. He noticed how the girl was upset about the destruction of the beautiful magic stone. Even her animal ears drooped sadly, so Isagi decided next time to give her some jewelry with a magic stone. A thought flashed through the boy's mind, another reason why he does all this. Isagi tirelessly continued grinding the ingredients, preparing new fertilizer for the soil of the village Pulminia. The boy mixed various ingredients into the magic stone: dense grass that grows quickly, a terrarium with reliable protection against insects, and gengid, which helps natural decomposition. Then he combined all this with different materials gathered in the forest. Soon the boy made the first sample of the new fertilizer, and Mercia, holding the pot with a sparkle in her eyes, immediately suggested testing it. Then they carefully applied another number on the pot with ink. Since it was their first experiment, they wrote the number 1 on the pot. Then they filled the pot with soil. Then they immediately planted specially bred arugula seeds in a pot, covered them with soil, and watered them. At that very moment, a sprout appeared in the pot from an arugula seed, and Isagi froze in amazement, how quickly it had grown. But in a moment the plant began to grow again, not stopping for a second, and very quickly the small sprout rucola turned into a fully grown plant. Isagi joyfully looked at the ripe arugulate was abundant, because it grew very quickly and yielded a generous harvest. The boy, looking at the arugula on the right, excitedly noticed that after this fertilizer it had grown simply wonderfully, and Isagi was already about to write down the result in the experiment notebook. But to everyone's surprise, the arugula did not stop. It continued to grow and grew so tall that it even surpassed the height of the boy and the girl, and Isagi watched this with admiration and amazement. The arugula grew very tall. The plant became gigantic, several meters high, its stems no longer resembling ordinary ones. Due to rapid growth and nutrients, they became too thick, and the pot instantly began to wobble from such expansion. Mercia froze in amazement. The plant was growing incredibly fast, and she could not believe her eyes. Together with the boy, they watched as the arugula already reached the ceiling, its branches embracing the wooden beams. Mercia jokingly told Isagi that if the arugula grew any bigger, the walls and ceiling of the workshop would simply collapse. The boy immediately got scared. Isagi rushed to the pot with arugula. In a moment, he pressed his palm right at the base of the stem, and at that very moment, the boy overturned the pot. At that moment, Isagi directed magical power into the plant, destroying its base so that it would no longer grow and could not destroy the house. Then he sharply threw the broken plant from the table onto the floor. He destroyed it with alchemy. Isagi shuddered with horror when he realized it was dangerous. He looked sadly at the plant he had overturned. Out of curiosity, the boy almost destroyed his newly built workshop. The girl could not believe it. They had no idea the plant would grow like that. Mercia thought it was because of the thick grass that intensifies everything here, and Ire added that probably a lot of quality magical energy also fueled the growth. In any case, their experiment failed for the first time. If that was really the case, Isagi was fired up and wanted to try to extract magical power from that stone, but to see the result of mixing different materials, he needed to skillfully choose the magical stone itself. To make the best fertilizer for the soil in the village of Pamenia, the boy had to try all the options in a row. He stood and thoughtfully looked at the plant that grew from his unsuccessful fertilizer. Isagi smiled and told the girl that working with fertilizers definitely would not be easy, but one must try hard to get a good result, and meanwhile Mercia was cleaning up the unsuccessful arugula plant. Smiling warmly, she supported the boy's words, and Mercia, holding a pot with plants in her hands, hoped she could help him create fertilizer for the village of Pamenia. Time passed. It began to rain outside, and the boy and girl remained in the workshop, ignoring the bad weather. The pot was again marked with a special number. It was their second experiment. Isagi planted arugula seeds again, but this time used a different fertilizer. But everything repeated. The result was again the same as in the previous experiment. The arugula grew to gigantic sizes again, and Isagi already knew what to do. A little more time passed, and this was already the 73rd experiment of the boy. This time the plant grew to a normal size, but at the same moment it withered and died, which made Isagi very upset. The next experiment with fertilizers also did not please them. They planted sweet pepper. Fruits appeared, but quickly withered along with the plant itself, and Mercia became very worried. Time passed. Deep night fell outside, and it was dark, but the boy and the girl still remained in the workshop and diligently worked on experiments, searching for the perfect fertilizer. The number of their attempts had long exceeded a dozen. This was already their 200th experiment. The girl was again sticking various labels on the clay pots. Meanwhile, Isagi sat at his desk, tired but focused, and was developing new fertilizer recipes, noting the mistakes of previous attempts. On his desk lay a pile of crumpled sheets. For a moment, breaking away from creating new fertilizer recipes, Isagi raised his eyes and smiled tiredly, looking at nothing in particular. When he and Marcia persistently repeated experiments again and again to improve something, the work seemed to take him back to the times when they lived in the Empire. The boy briefly got lost in memories, but the work did not wait. It was necessary to continue improving the fertilizer recipes. After some time, they again took up a new experiment. Broken pots from previous failures still lay on the table, and the boy and girl planted the same pepper seeds in a fresh pot. Mercia carefully poured water into the pot with the planted seeds. Isagi held their breath in anxiety that something might go wrong, and the boy was ready to clean everything up with alchemy in case of failure. As soon as they watered the soil, the seeds immediately sprouted and instantly became a seedling, and this was already their 250th fertilizer experiment. Isagi and Mercio did not take their eyes off the tiny seedling. Tension gripped their chests. They stood ready, and very soon that pepper seedling grew into a strong plant, heavy with ripe fruits. The plant looked simply wonderful. Sweet peppers hung on it ripe and juicy, and Isagi and Marcia froze in amazement, seeing that the plant's growth had stopped. Merci told him that the plant also had no anomalies, neither in the stem nor in the leaves. So, the result turned out to be the same as from the fertilizer from the Empire. This could only mean one thing. Isagi, leaning on the table, froze in shock and silence, and quietly said with unexpected disbelief, "Everything is already ready." Then the boy, with tears of joy in his eyes, lifted the pot. With the successful experiment, they finally managed to conduct the fertilizer experiment, and it had cost them 3 weeks of hard work. They managed to make fertilizer only from what was in the village, and since then, they no longer had problems with fertilizer shortages. Isagi joyfully and loudly agreed with the words of the girl with black hair. Now nothing threatens the village's agriculture. But the boy immediately fell into despair. He realized that in the village, besides him, there was no alchemist. If something happened to him, fertilizer production could simply stop. Merci suggested to the boy to give the fertilizer recipe to the city alchemists so that they could make it, but Isagi only shook his head. He doubted that they could really replicate it because they lacked skills and knowledge in alchemy. Samasiya enthusiastically threw the boy another idea to come up with a simpler recipe, but Isagi himself was not sure about this. He did not know how experienced the alchemists in the city were. Silence reigned in the room for a few seconds. Mercia was upset she could not find the right way out of the situation, and Isagi pondered, intensely searching for a way to solve this problem. But they could not resolve the issue, so the boy and girl decided to postpone it. They did not want to bother themselves unnecessarily. Finally, on the 250th experiment, they managed to create fertilizer. The next morning, Isagi smiled and thanked the girl for the delicious food she had prepared. The vegetables they were treated to were very tasty, and Merci agreed too. The boy carried the dirty dishes to the sink, and the girl washed the plates herself. Isagi decided to help her wash the dishes the boy took on washing, and Mercy sincerely thanked him for the help. Isagi noticed that when he and Marcia did something together, their conversation sometimes suddenly stopped, and an awkward silence fell between them. But for some reason next to her, he did not feel any embarrassment at all, and Isagi, thinking about this, continued washing the dishes with a warm smile. Then he wanted to say something to the girl. Isagi told Mercy that when they stand next to each other and do household chores together, they look like a real married couple, and the girl immediately became embarrassed and blushed at his words. Mercy blushed with excitement, turned away from the boy, and shyly repeated the words about the married couple, after which she began to stutter from embarrassment and tried uncertainly to say something. But her words were suddenly interrupted by a knock on the door of their house. Someone was looking for the alchemist Isagi. The boy told the girl that he would open it himself, and she should finish washing the dishes. Then Isagi felt that Mercy was very dissatisfied with something. A gloomy expression appeared on her face. Her tail twitched angrily, but Mercy herself said gloomily that everything was fine. Isagi was already approaching the door and could not get rid of the thought that Mercy was upset because the dark-haired girl did not like washing dishes. Then he opened the door, and a stranger stood before him. Suddenly, a sack appeared right in front of him. Isagi looked around and saw no one. He was surprised that no one was there, but at that moment, someone suddenly called the boy from below. It was a little girl from the beast folk race. A large and heavy backpack hung on her back. The boy, seeing her, realized that she was a person of the dog clan. Noticing her small stature, he decided that she was a child. The girl introduced herself with a smile. Her name was Konya. She worked at a wonderful trading company and had come to him for important negotiations, specifically with him and his manager. Isagi could not believe they really wanted to negotiate with him. The girl confirmed with a joyful smile. Then she asked for permission to hold negotiations and discuss all the details of the matter at his home. The boy understood what was what, let the girl into the house, and led her to the living room, and she quietly apologized to him for entering without permission. Then Konya quickly went up the front stairs and tried to enter the house, without even attempting to take off the large backpack. That is why her huge backpack, stuffed to the brim, prevented her from entering Isagi's house. The girl tried hard to squeeze into the room, but Isagi explained that with such a backpack she simply wouldn't fit through the door. Because of this, Konya had to leave her big and heavy backpack. Near the house it just lay on the ground, lonely. Already settled on the chair, she sincerely apologized to them for the inconvenience. Konya wanted to say something more to Isagi and the girl with black hair, but did not know her name. For a moment the room was enveloped in silence. The girl did not know how to start a conversation with her interlocutor. Merci was surprised by the long look that Kana cast at her. Kanai's eyes were burning. He asked the guy with admiration if Mercia was his wife, and the girl was completely bewildered with surprise. The boy immediately, with an admiring sparkle in his eyes, replied to Konai that this girl was his servant, and at the same time the daughter of the village headman, and Marcia was so worried that she trembled with overwhelming emotions. Konya awkwardly apologized to the girl for her question, but Mercia said with a joyful smile not to worry about it, and then told everyone she would go and prepare tea for all. Isagi noticed how the girl went out humming to herself, and he was truly surprised that Mercy was so cheerful. Just recently, she had been angry and dissatisfied, in a bad mood. The boy pondered how quickly and unexpectedly Mercia's mood changed. Her feminine heart was still a mystery to him. Meanwhile, the girl, smiling and holding a tray, walked away from them toward the kitchen. Soon Mercia brought tea that she had prepared herself. Kanienia looked at him in surprise, and then Isagi, Mercia, and Kanienia had a good time together. Koni liked the tea so much that she was pleasantly impressed. As soon as Kanya left, the dog grabbed the cup with its paws and eagerly tried the treat the girl had prepared. Konya happily explained that besides bitterness, the tea hides a barely noticeable sweetness, so the drink is really tasty. She asked what exactly Mercia had added, and it turned out that Mercia brewed goji leaves she had gathered in the nearby forest. The girl was glowing with joy because of this news. Kanya immediately noted in her notebook that tea can be made from wolfberry leaves. If brewed, the drink turns out very tasty. She wanted a horse, so she bought one. The girl quickly wrote down the received information in her notebook. Isagi looked surprised. Where did the girl suddenly get this notebook from? While the girl was writing down information about goji berries, Isagi quietly asked Mercia about that famous trading company. He wanted to know what exactly it does. Mercia explained to him, Wonderful is a very large and famous trading company known even in the animal kingdom. Its main office is in the capital. Branches are scattered across many cities, and everyone who works there is a half-human of the dog-like race. The boy looked stunned. The company turned out to be so big that he did not understand why a businesswoman named Kanya from such a firm came specifically to him. The girl quickly wrote all the information in her notebook, then sharply closed it and apologized to them for being late. Kanai told them that recently the markets suddenly had more goods of good quality, and the boy and Mercia were very surprised by this. Kanyan was glad. These crops grow incredibly fast and can be harvested year-round, and they are much tastier than those previously grown by animals. Her desire to find out where this amazing plant came from led the girl straight to the village of Pamenya, and to get there, she had to overcome a long journey. Mercia instantly understood that it was about the harvest in the village of Puminia, and Isagi also guessed why she was here. Recently the harvest there had increased, so the merchants probably went to trade in other villages. Thus Kanya learned that it was Isagi himself who was the reason for the richer harvest. She smiled and agreed with the boy, and her tail briskly twitched with joy. It was strange to her. The same crops grown in the village of Plumia were also grown in other villages, but the harvest turned out completely different. But for Isagi, this was quite logical. Kanya was very surprised by his answer. Isagi explained to her that he had developed these crops through alchemy. Specifically for the soil of this area, it was easy to grow them here, but getting the same quality elsewhere would be difficult. Kanya understood that the whole matter was precisely in the soil. She was surprised that they used alchemy in agriculture. They applied alchemy to select the best crops. The girl carefully wrote this down in her notebook. Isagi agreed with Kanya's words. Kanya quickly wrote everything down in her notebook. She works in a large trading company, so she quickly grasps the essence of the matter and has a good imagination. The girl recorded all the necessary information in her notebook and closed it. Now, she was ready to move on to the main topic of negotiations. Kanya asked Isagi if he could regularly sell his harvest wholesale to this wonderful trading company, and the boy from Mercia was stunned by her proposal. Then he bitterly realized that the resources around the village were not infinite. Therefore, it was vital for them to have a connection with a large trading company. The man did not reject the offer, but immediately set his conditions. Kanya eagerly wanted to learn them to prepare for the next negotiations. Isagi quietly but persistently explained to her. He is an alchemist, and without the necessary materials he cannot create anything, so he needs, first and foremost, to be provided with exactly the materials he requests. The girl nodded to them without hesitation, and calmly smiled in response to his demand to bring the materials needed for alchemy. She smiled proudly and said that for their wonderful trading company, this is not a problem at all. They can obtain any materials from the kingdom of beasts without any difficulties. Then Yasagi asked the girl about alchemical materials outside the empire, and Kanya shyly turned away from the boy. She could not give him any guarantees. The boys had no more questions, and Kanai asked how much exactly Mercia and Isagi can reliably sell wholesale. This is an important question to pay attention to, because trade depends on it. The boy prepared in advance. He compiled a paper with figures about this year's harvest, so the conversation would be shorter and clearer regarding trade. Cornea began to closely monitor the weekly harvests. She asked how much harvest they would be able to supply, and this, one could say, was the most important question. Mercia confidently stated that, for Mr. Asagi's new varieties, nothing is impossible, and there will be as much work as materials arrive. Kanai was impressed by the boys' enthusiasm. It was clear how much they wanted to start trading as soon as possible. The girl was pleasantly surprised by the incredible speed the boys can send shipments weekly. She asked hopefully if it was possible to increase the supply volumes to make the work even more efficient. Isaki froze, thinking, it is really difficult to increase the actual volume. Because now only Golem and the boys can work. If they push themselves even harder in the field, they will have no strength left for anything else. He mentally assembles a puzzle: how to combine the production of one type of fertilizer, the selection of varieties, and the manufacture of magical tools. He is still too early to devote himself fully to work, as a real farmer does. Before that, he was drowning in affairs, so the time for such serious decisions had not yet come. Konya advised hiring people to take care of the fields that would really ease the work significantly. Isagi and Marcia repeated the spoken words. In a few minutes, they literally understood doing so had really become fashionable. Earlier, they hadn't even thought that part of the work could be entrusted to someone else. Isagi could not comprehend why such a simple idea had never even crossed his mind before. Probably, he was used to pushing himself to exhaustion and never imagined that this was even possible. The girl is delighted with Konya's idea. She believes that Isagi should focus better on studying alchemy and entrust the fieldwork to others, that way they could grow even more different vegetables and fruits. He sharply clenched his hand into a fist. Isagi is now completely determined. He is going to do exactly as Konya advised. The boy decided to grow a large field from an empty plot. This would be a real breakthrough in their work. Punia suggested giving the large field to the farm. Isagi and Mercia again pondered. It seemed that this time too they missed something very simple, but there was no need to worry. The main thing was that now they knew about it. All three sat at the table in the middle of the endless field, and Isagi suddenly realized, improving the entire farm is really a wonderful idea. This will help him not only establish trade, but also independently cultivate new varieties. Isagi already imagines how he grows a large harvest on a huge farm and sends goods for sale, and Konya is already happy that the Bountiful company will sell these goods everywhere. Such a strong thirst for victory emanated from Isagi and Konya that it repelled Mercia. It seems the girl has already felt how much work awaits them. Konya extends her hand to the boy and sincerely wishes prosperity to his large farm. From now on, the boy burns with impatience and waits to finally start working with the trading company. Mercia was glad that everything turned out this way, and now they will have even more opportunities to grow new plants. The boy thought about what to do with the staff now. He considered hiring workers under contract from the trading company. Wonderful. This will really help handle some tasks more easily, but it is still worth looking for a few more options to solve this problem. Still, the boy realized that this was not the best idea, so he decided to first walk around the village and look for workers. He would ask others only if the villagers were not enough. Then the girl approached the boy and handed him a glass with a drink. Sagi, as always, asks her if the villagers will respond to the vacancy, and this question tormented the boy because he did not know how everything would turn out. Recently, food in the village has become much better, and the boy wonders if there will now be people who want to work on his farm, since everyone can already feed themselves. The girl was firmly convinced the needed people will always be found. All the residents are incredibly grateful to this boy. He has done so many good deeds for them and taught them many useful things. Isagi wants the people working on his farm to clearly understand it is beneficial for them too. The girl noticed how generous and caring her master is towards others. He takes a glass with a drink in his hands, and its warmth gently warms her palms. The girl suddenly notices her master has a good heart. She thinks that to earn money, it is worth offering new varieties that the guy has not yet given out to the peasants. Then people will have at least some incentive to come to the interview. It would be wonderful if it were possible to create varieties that grow only in a certain place, and if the local residents could use them, they would definitely be happy. The girl with a smile suggested planting fruits, for example apples and bananas. In a few seconds, the girl with shining eyes suggested planting grapes. It was clear that she really wanted to taste those berries. Isagi apologized and calmly explained that the grapes are still ripening. When she heard this news, the girl became very upset, and at that very moment the boy realized that she really loves grapes. She did not answer this, only asked to say when the grapes could be improved. Isagi is thinking about where to start his work. They still have a lot of work to do, which is better done in order and according to a certain plan. He needs 5 workers. It is still unclear how many deals there will be and how much profit. He wants to first try to organize the work of a small team. Later the profit will increase. There is enough work for everyone. The girl told the boy that she would go ask her father for permission to recruit people for work, and she left. Isagi sincerely hopes that everything will go as best as possible. After all, a large farm is a real mountain of work. 5 days had passed since Isagi posted the recruitment announcement. He was just reading a book when suddenly, a girl ran up to him with important news. Mercia ran into the room, breathing heavily. Isagi asked if anyone had responded to the invitation to join, and the girl froze in surprise. As it turned out, there were an insane number of applications. More than 10 times the number of people needed showed up. A huge crowd gathered at the boy's house. Everyone wanted to try their hand at this and work on the farm. no one could have imagined that so many applicants would come for the interview. A crowd of people was pressing before the entrance to the house. The boys could not even imagine that so many people would rush to get a job with them. The first candidate turned out to be a mutual acquaintance of Isagi and Mercier. It turned out to be Naya. She had also applied. For her, it was quite funny, and the salary was a pleasant bonus that few would refuse, especially if the job is interesting. Naeon noticed there were quite a lot of candidates. Isagi sincerely admitted that he would very much like to hire all the willing, but he must reduce the number of candidates and choose the best through interviews. Isagi could not help but notice Nia's ears. She suddenly became so cute, like a little kitten. She asked the boy if they were friends. The girl hinted that she should go work on the farm. At that very moment, Mercia suddenly appeared behind the girl, and her gaze immediately made it clear that nothing good would come of its job. Candidate needed only one quick look from Mercia to instantly feel awkward. The girl sharply said that the interview was for everyone without exception, pushed her aside, and asked her to get in line. The girl's argument reached the boy, felt a bit embarrassed to listen to their conversation. Isagi could not even believe that so many people wanted to work on his farm. He did not expect so many willing, and it warmed his heart because in such a situation, he could definitely assemble a team. Finally, the time came to start the interview. Isagi apologized to the people for the wait and immediately got down to business. Yin Mercy had a ton of work. They had to check every job candidate. Isagi listened intently to everyone who came to talk about their desire to work, not missing a single detail because any one of them could decide who would be taken to his farm. The next day, several boys were called to the farm. They assumed that if they were called again, it meant they were hired, and this pleased them greatly. After all, they were lucky to pass the selection among many others. Among the chosen were 5 boys who could not contain their joy. They successfully passed the interview, but not everyone was lucky. After the interviews, many remained without a job. When Naya heard this, her heart leaped, rushed to embrace Mercia with wild joy. Mercia was not thrilled by such tenderness, but she did not refuse either. She simply stood next to the newly appointed employee, remaining reserved. Isaiah, although the boys were probably already acquainted with each other, still asked them to introduce themselves. After all, this is one of the most important steps for further joint work in any team. Naya introduced herself and said that she used to help her grandfather work in the field. This became a big plus for her, as experience is always important when getting a job. Isagi recalls how last time Naya really helped them out in the field. She can truly be relied upon, and if needed, she always gives useful advice. Turned out that Rods is the son of a beekeeper. He is completely confident in his endurance and strength. As it turned out, he has no experience in agriculture, but thanks to his robustness, he can be trusted with physical work. Nora helps her father on a large farm and also keeps records in her mother's shop. She is not as strong as other workers, but she is excellent with numbers and performs small tasks and office work perfectly. Ricardo was a hunter, but not only that, he worked in the field, sowing the seeds he got from Isagi, and among all the residents, he planted the most. It seems he already imagines himself on the farm, working there. Ragment has as much farming experience as Ricardo. He was tormented by doubt. Does that man really want to hire him too? Ragment cannot understand why he was taken into the team at the banquet. He said a lot of rude things to Isagi. The boy passionately explained, it is precisely because of that he wants to hire him. Isagi thinks that Ragmund will be able to ask him questions without any embarrassment. Now the man guesses what the matter is. He said that in that case, he asks permission to ask Isagi a question himself. It is his duty, and he liked the straightforwardness of this man. Mercia brought rakes, a hose, and scythes, and is now asking the workers to help with the harvest. Naya inquired what exactly they would have to gather, and no one had any idea how much work awaited them. The girl grabbed the list and began to read intently what needed to be gathered today. The list included tomatoes, cucumbers, eggplants, bell peppers, and Chinese cabbage, but in reality, the farm grows many other vegetables and fruits. The girl had not yet finished reading the list when Naya suddenly asked, "Isn't there too much for one day?" The girl explained that was exactly why she wanted the workers to help them. Mershechka reminded, although the work is quite hard, they pay well here, and Sai and Isagi do not object if the guys take part of the harvest with them. The conditions are very favorable. Mercia placed her hand on Nia's shoulder and smiled. It seemed as if she was kindly encouraging them to try even harder, and that smile seemed to imply the workers have no other choice anyway. All the workers, struck by her iron confidence, immediately rushed to work, because it seemed the best thing now was simply to diligently do their job and strictly follow the rules. Merci approached Isagi and asked him to focus on the work in the workshop and leave everything else to her, could not refuse, because he completely trusts Merci and knows that her seriousness deserves respect. Here the boys got to work in the field. Everyone rushed to the work they were hired for. Mershka patiently and thoroughly explained how to use each tool the workers received. Everyone fell silent and listened attentively to the girl. They were interested and pleased to learn something new. Mercy explained in detail to Ragmont how to hold a knife and cut cabbage, and he listened, firmly holding the head with both hands. When Naya was going to work, she noticed an apple tree covered with fruit. Her eyes instantly lit up, but she felt awkward to take even one apple. Mercio was standing very close, and she thought that later after work, they would still be able to get their fruits and vegetables. The guys worked tirelessly. Some have already realized that this is really hard work, but for those who have a lot of strength and endurance, no difficulties arose. While the guys were sweating in the field, Isagi immersed himself in the harvest work in the workshop and realized the fruits are not yet ripe, but the new workers gave him much more time to wait for their ripeness. It turned out that strawberries, apples, and bananas grow wonderfully, but on a large farm, they need to be reinforced with several more varieties. This way they will become more resilient and survive better in different conditions. If things continue like this, the workshop will have to be expanded. While the guy was drowning in thoughts, he noticed how Mercia was working in the field. Isagi feels that this girl keeps him afloat. She helps with household chores in the workshop and even on the farm. The girl always tries too hard. Suddenly Isagi remembered how the girl asked about grapes and got so carried away with that conversation that for a moment she even forgot about herself, imagining bunches of large and juicy berries. He understands that growing grapes will take a lot of time, but Isagi still wants to try and firmly decided to complete the work on creating and growing new varieties of vegetables and fruits. Isagi straightens his back. As if the work in the workshop is already finished, piles of written sheets are scattered messily in places on all surfaces. He feels that very soon everyone will start waking up. Isagi notices how hard the first day was for the workers and wonders how to sincerely thank them for their work. Suddenly an idea comes to his mind. Isagi rushed to the cabinet, thinking he still had some time. He was going to make a magical tool that would significantly ease the work on the farm. When the boy was in the castle, in his free time, he enthusiastically invented plans for magical devices. His notes are just sketches, but if combined, they would result in something truly useful for all the workers. Moreover, materials are catastrophically lacking, so some ideas are impossible to implement, and some inventions are described only by drawings and diagrams, so reproducing them will be extremely difficult. Isagi stops writing, and suddenly, even to himself, unexpectedly comes across one thing, a drawing of a tool with a description that can help in creating this device. The work in the field temporarily stopped. Naya stretched her hands forward without words. It was clear how exhausted she was from the work, and all the boys felt how hard farm labor is and how much strength it takes. All the boys gathered in the room and could barely say a word. They were resting after hard work in the field, and Mercy praised the workers and said that everyone had worked well. Ragman sighed heavily and admitted that he hadn't been this tired for a long time, and Rickard added that today he worked much harder than usual at home. No one expected such a mountain of work, but everyone could imagine how hard it was. Rods, though terribly tired, was still glad that together with the boys they gathered a bunch of vegetables, and for this work they would receive not only good pay but also some collected fruits. Ragnant looked carefully at Nora. It seemed to him that she was not tired at all. Nora lowered her head and quietly sighed. In fact, she was extremely tired and said that she was holding on only thanks to female energy. The man was a little puzzled. He did not quite understand what she was talking about. Nora, barely breathing, said that she did this every day. Her fake laughter was not cheerful at all. After all, such hard work is not suitable for a little girl. He entered the room and sincerely thanked the boys for their work, then asked them to sit down for a minute. He had something interesting to show, and the boys agreed, holding their breath and listening attentively because they really wanted to find out what he would show. Usagi extends an object covered with cloth and says that it is a gift for his workers. The man is glowing with joy because now he can make the boys' work a little more interesting. Everyone froze and stared intently at this still unfamiliar object. Isagi tears off the cloth and shows the boys the test mixer. Number 1, he is glowing with pride and wants to visually show how it works. The boys had no idea yet what this thing was for and why it was used at all until Isagi explained that it was a magical tool. Its use would really amaze the locals, and the result would make them look at fruits and vegetables in a new way. The boy began to explain that at its core was a magical fragment without any properties, and if magical energy was applied, the top blade would start to rotate. The workers looked at him confused and did not understand at all what he was talking about. Mercia energetically cut fruits on the board and put them into the mixer. The boy is about to add some water, then use a drop of magic to start the magical device and get one thing. Mixers suddenly roared and began grinding the vegetables inside. Naya was in shock. Such valuable vegetables were being used just like that. She thought that such an attitude towards fruits and vegetables was wrong. Could it be that the boy did not hear a single scream from the girl? Isagi asked me to calm down and just look at what came out as a result. What he invented caused genuine surprise on the faces of the workers. With a wet hand, he handed the boys a glass of freshly squeezed apple juice. All the workers froze in amazement. Isagi managed to make apple juice with only 2 ingredients, and they even thought it was some kind of magic. The man asked the children who wanted to drink, and they all immediately raised their hands. They really wanted to try the juices as soon as possible. They were exhausted after working on the farm, and now they could finally try a new drink that wonderfully quenched their thirst. The taste of the drink pleased everyone. Shiny, juicy apples dripping with juice instantly appeared in their imagination, and these sunny fruits gave the children warm and pleasant feelings. Inie, Rodos, and Ricardo were delighted. From ordinary apples and water came an incredibly tasty drink, with a rich apple flavor simply unbeatable. Isaki winked at the boys. He was incredibly pleased that they liked the drink. Suddenly, behind the boy with empty glasses appeared Nora and Ragman, and they also wanted to taste this amazing drink. Isagi asked the two to wait a little first. He wanted to wash the dishes. To make it easier to drink, this time he replaced water with milk. Milk makes the taste milder, but because of this, he had to slightly change the composition of the ingredients that give the drink an unusual shade. So Isagi will take on banana and strawberry milk. The new drinks were incredibly unusual before. No one could even imagine anything like this, and Nora and Ragman began to taste them. Nora felt the aroma and sweetness of juicy strawberries, which seemed to spread throughout her body. Suddenly, she was overwhelmed with happiness. The drink inspired her so much that it seemed she was about to fly. The boys instantly disappeared, as if they had never been there. The Ragman was also satisfied with the drink. He felt his strength returning. Naya admitted, for the first time in her life, she drank such a delicious juice. Ricardo felt, after such juice, he was ready to go into battle even tomorrow. He decided to collect even more than today, and all the workers again confirmed that the working conditions remain at the highest level. The boy lit up with joy. The children liked the juice, and he realized that all his efforts were not in vain. Naya sees the tasty banana milk and also wants to try it, and Isagi agrees, but first says that he needs to wash the bottle again. Merci will listen to their conversations with a smile on her lips. She is happy Isagi so easily found a common language with the boys. Mercia really did not doubt this gentleman. At first, Isagi did not even understand what it was about. Merci thought that this guy had his own clever tactic. He gives the workers tasty fruits so they don't want to go anywhere. The girl noticed that this man skillfully uses the carrot and stick method. Mockery did not even think about it. How nice it would be if children had at least a little fun working on the farm. Mercia agreed with this opinion. She fully supports the boy. The girl's thoughts coincided with her mentor. Suddenly, Isagi hands Mercy a glass with a drink. But the boy understood. The girl was also tired and had not yet tasted the drinks. He deliberately took the glass and suggested trying it together before treating others. It seems Isagi created a completely different drink's imagination, and ingenuity simply know no bounds. Mercier smiled gently. They clinked their glasses and decided to drink to the bottom in honor of how much effort they put into this hard day. On this sunny day, Mercia, as always, asks Isagi to check and tidy up the garden beds. The boy does not object and calmly responds to her requests, as she always helps him. It has been a month and a half since he and the boys took over the farm. When there were 5 workers in Mercia, their farm finally started working at full capacity, and everyone noticed their efforts are bearing fruit. Their farm became truly large. There were ordinary fields, medicinal herb plantations, wheat fields, and an orchard. All this was necessary for the farm to work properly. The company grew into a real giant. Numerous plots and plantations, and especially endless fields, leave no one indifferent. Isenji feels that with such a scale, it is becoming increasingly difficult to travel around. And then suddenly, one idea appeared in his head. He gently asked the girl to wait a little. He just needed a little time to implement his idea. The boy tells how he came up with a wonderful idea. He took purified copper and crafted a copper horse from it, and the invention turned out so lifelike that it was impossible to distinguish it from a real animal. It turned out that this horse was a golem, and he immediately realized that having such transport was real luck. Now he had a fast and convenient way to move around, allowing him to survey large territories and save energy and time. The girl sincerely thanked the man. He helped her so much. Isaki decided to craft another such horse so they could ride together. It turned out that the materials were enough for only one horse, and there was nothing left for the second. They had to travel all their errands on one horse. Mercier simply could not believe such news. During the ride, the girl did not hold on to the boy. She was very embarrassed. Isagi asked her to hold on tight. Riding without support was very dangerous. Mercia blushed and grabbed the boy by the jacket. She wildly liked being so close to this man. The boy suddenly turned around and noticed that someone behind him was purring. He asked the girl if it was her. Mercia just turned away and said that the boy was just imagining things, then rested her head on Asaga's shoulder. Sie pondered, what sound could possibly be heard in such a situation? Trolling the territory on a copper horse is much more convenient. It speeds along, and the guys save a lot of time they would have spent checking everything on foot. Isagi and Marcia arrived at Rhodes there. He worked right on site together with the Golems. Without expecting to see the guys, he simply greeted them. Rhodes always diligently does his job and gives no reason to doubt himself. The boy said he came just to check the farm a little and settle a few matters, asked not to worry about him. Rhodes understood everything and decided not to interfere, so the boy approached one of the greenhouses. He notices that in the Pramino house the temperature is under control. The building is covered with a semi-transparent film, and special equipment inside maintains the required temperature. The boy is sure it is better to slow down the growth of plants a little and let them grow more slowly, because the correct growth rate of vegetables and fruits also matters. He carefully examines every bush and measures the fruits. Mercia notices that this boy is actually a very kind person. But as it turned out, Asagi heard absolutely nothing when he asked the girl again. She only said that she hadn't said anything and just turned away. She looked out the window and thought, creating such a large farm in the village is far beyond the power of just anyone, so its owner seemed to her a truly amazing person to look up to. When he had thoroughly checked everything, he said it was time to go to the garden. All the fields on the farm needed to be carefully walked around and inspected. This is important to notice any problems in time during the growing of vegetables and fruits. Suddenly Nea runs up to Asagi and shouts that something has happened to the garden. The girl was so upset that she could barely breathe, and this immediately shows the matter is urgent. The girl led them without a word, and this turned out to be the best decision. Now every second is worth its weight in gold, and such news cannot be delayed. The boys came to the garden and froze in horror. All the fruits were spoiled and broken, watermelon rinds were scattered all over the field, and the pulp was scattered in pieces throughout the territory. Isagi and Mercia froze at what they saw. They could not understand how this happened at all. No one could even imagine, because this only happens in extremely rare cases that can be counted on the fingers of one hand. The fruits looked as if a storm had swept through them. Everything was rolled across the field and slammed to the ground so hard that they shattered into pieces, but it was hardly a real natural disaster. Isagi asks Ni if it was the same yesterday, and she shakes her head. Nothing like this happened yesterday. The sky outside the window is clear, there was no rain, and moreover, there has been no storm for quite a long time. She said that when she finished work, everything was as usual, but in the morning everything became terrible. Nea barely held back tears. It was hard for her to realize that she had allowed such a disaster. The boy asked if there were still rotten fruits left. The girl refused and said that the fruits only rot here, but Nea did not feel better because she was responsible for the watermelon field. The boy sighed with relief. He was lucky. Only the watermelons were spoiled, because if other fields had been affected, the farm would have suffered huge losses, and recovery would have taken a very long time. Nea clenched her hands into fists and held them in front of her. She's trembling all over and breaking into sobs, pleading for forgiveness from the boy. She never thought such a great misfortune could happen in the field. Now she feels guilty for not watching over the harvest. You noticed how the girl was worried about the harvest. Mercier began to calm her down, insistently saying that it was not her fault. Isagi agreed, adding that you cannot constantly watch over the fields, even at night. At first, Isagi set about gathering all the damaged items, and the girls gladly agreed to help her. In the wooden boxes lay rotten fruits. Insects were circling above them, and Isagi looked at these fruits, wondering why this could have happened. Suddenly, the boy noticed claw marks on one of the fruits. Not far from the field, he found traces of wild animals. They could tell a lot and even hint at why so much of the harvest was spoiled. Now we understand, it was not done by a human. Mercier confirms she senses a faint smell of wild animals, and suddenly everything becomes clear to the boys. They know who is to blame. Suddenly Nea distracts them and asks them to come look. She found something that could confirm the boys' suspicions. It is the work of wild animals. It turned out the girl found a black ball of fur. The boy thought it might be a black wolf. Such powerful beasts often cause a lot of trouble because they are wild animals that hunt for their own food. Neu was amazed. The boy understood everything just by touching a piece of wool. He explained that he was good at determining the properties of materials. Isagi skillfully analyzed the material the girl had found. Mercia was convinced that wild animals came to the melon patch because of the sweet smell of the fruits and descended from the mountains at night, and Nea was worried, feared it might happen again today. Merci said that it will definitely happen again, bears that have already tried human meat will attack and destroy life again. The example was very gruesome but real and convincing. Naya became even more frightened by this news and does not know what to do now. Wild animals are very dangerous, and giving away the harvest for free means losing the farm's profit and harming its workers. Everyone knew the enemy was incredibly agile and fought fiercely, so engaging him in battle on the open field of the farm was a bad idea. In this case, the guy suggests performing right from the watermelon field, where the fruits have already spoiled. The boy pleaded with NEA to call Ragment and Ricardo to protect the farm, but they must not risk their own lives for this. The girl obeyed and instantly dashed at full speed. The boy sharply ordered the golems to stop working. Right now, the most important thing was to protect the farm, and he and Mercia had to urgently devise a clear plan together, as their shared future depended on it. The boy mounted his horse. He was going to track the traces of wild animals in the forest. Merci instantly jumped into the saddle and decisively said that she would definitely go with the masters, was sure that Asagi might need help at any moment. He said he would speed up a bit, so the girl would have to hold on tighter. In Mercia, no one objected. They decisively set out to find out why the watermelons in the field had spoiled. The boys were already deep in the forest. The boy anxiously asks the girl if these tracks are the same as those in the watermelon field. It is very important for him to know this, because that way he can be sure that his suspicions on the farm were correct. The girl confirmed this. The tracks continued uninterrupted deep into the forest, and the scent of animals was barely noticeable in the air. All this only proved that wild beasts were to blame, the ones who spoiled the harvest. And suddenly Mercia notices that right next to them, at a wildly high speed, a huge pack of wild animals is rushing. Suddenly the boys found themselves so close that they could hardly believe it. They were walking almost side by side. During one adventure, the boys suddenly found themselves surrounded by wild animals. It turned out these beasts were shadow wolves. The boy was right. As soon as he touched the patch of fur that a worker accidentally found in the field, everything became clear. Isagi regrets he should have foreseen this. He should have taken friends for support. He never imagined that wild beasts, stronger than humans, would be so hard to overcome. The boy asks Mercier, can she handle the shadow wolf? However, the girl is only half confident in this, although at the same time she remains self-assured and definitely ready to protect herself and her master. Asagi understands this with a chill in his chest. The enemy is so strong that even Mercia is not sure if she can defeat it. According to his strategy, helping Mercia is a chance for victory, but the black wolves will not allow it. He carefully takes his hand out of the glove. Mercia appears before the boy and says that she will stall for time so that he can run away at that moment. The girl made a very bold decision. Isagi froze at the girl's words. He did not even guess that Mercia would dare to take such a bold step, since she could have been left alone in the wild among wild nature and predatory beasts. He hissed with anger on his face that he would not be able to leave her and escape. The boy understands that this is illogical, but being the only man, he simply cannot help but show mercy. Isagi believes that he simply has no right to act this way. He takes the girl by the shoulders and says that she supported him even after he was expelled from the imperial castle. Isagi says even if he has problems again, that is no reason to leave her. He must be with Mercia precisely in the most dangerous moments, because together they are much stronger. These words deeply moved Mercia. But this touching moment was suddenly broken by the evil laughter of a wolf. The boys instantly became alert and began to look for where the laughter was coming from, but at first they could not figure out exactly where the predator was hiding. One of the shadow wolves glanced and thought, these people are fools if they seriously believe they have time to argue. The shadow wolf grumbled and thought that people allow themselves too much when they waste such valuable time. The boy suddenly realized the wolf was so intelligent that it not only spoke but also understood human language. This impressed him, but at the same time he expected something similar from a magical wild creature. Sagi thought to himself that the wolf might just be playing with them. If the beast does not attack, the boy still has a chance to negotiate, so Isagi came up with a way to avoid the confrontation altogether. Isagi loudly shouts that he wants to negotiate with the wolf, and Mercio froze in surprise. She did not expect her mentor to risk approaching the wolf and offering it some kind of deal, knowing that he could lose. The wolf even shuddered with surprise and asked again if this man really wanted to negotiate specifically with them. The monsters, no one had dared to do that before, but this unusually brave man decided to be the first to take a step toward the wild beast. The boy nods and says the conversation will be short and beneficial. The wolf approaches closer. It is clear he is interested and gives the boy a chance to say something. He brings his face closer to the boy. In a terrifying voice, he says that if he gets bored, he will be forced to defeat Isagi. This is truly frightening, but giving up now is simply impossible. The young man squeezed the glove in his hands even tighter. He asks the wolf if he ate the watermelons that grew in his garden yesterday. The wolf now already knows that these fruits are called watermelons. He decides to come down again tonight and eat them once more. The boy shouted that if the wolf continues to eat the watermelons, there will be no watermelons left. But if that happens, the wolf will go look for others. He is sure that these berries and fruits can definitely be replaced. The boy shrugged and said bitterly that, unfortunately, only they know how to grow these watermelons. All the wolves nearby froze in surprise, and even the one who was negotiating did not expect such an answer. The wolf got angry and asked what the boy would demand then, while thinking that Asagi wants the wolves to leave if the watermelons disappear, and began to worry food can be lost so easily. The boy says that is completely untrue. He is going to bring the wolves watermelons and other grown vegetables and fruits, but in exchange, he will ask them for something for himself. The wolves became interested. It seems the watermelons really pleased them. They calmly and obediently listened to the boy and accepted all his conditions. Instead, Asagi asks the wolves to guard his farm. The wolf got angry and shouted that the boy was going to treat them like guard dogs. He did not expect such treatment towards himself and his pack, and he did not like the conditions the boy proposed at all. But the wolf had already taken a fighting stance. It seemed he was about to launch an attack. Merci felt that everything was going wrong, and from terrible anxiety for her master her heart was tightening. It was enough to say something wrong, and they would no longer be able to return home, to their native village and farm. But Isagi gently explained, everything depends on how the wolf himself views it. The boy explains that for the wolf, people are like domestic animals who constantly provide him with tasty food. All the boys thought very logically and relied on the wolf's words, and the wolf was stunned by this line of thought. The man gladly told that on his farm, besides watermelons, there was a lot of other tasty food, and the wolves at that moment had already calmed down and looked very interested in this offer. The boy anxiously asks what decision the wolf will make. The wild animals were extremely determined. They wanted to have a permanent place where they could find food. A dark night came deep and quiet. Now the farm is fully ready for defense. The boys stand on the border with weapons and cleaning equipment, resolutely determined to defend their farm. Suddenly Ni notices a tiny light flickering far ahead. The boys realized that Mercenary had returned. They were happy the boys came back alive and unharmed, as they had been gone for a long time. The boy awkwardly apologized for their delay. Golem's horse was completely exhausted, and they had to walk, but eventually they reached the village without incident, and Marcia decided not to say anything. Naya was worried. She was tormented by the thought that the boys might get injured. The boy said with relief that, fortunately, everything turned out well. Everyone was glad that those who arrived were alive and healthy, but the boys still worried about Isagi and Mercia. The girl asked with lively interest whether the boys managed to tame the black wolves. The boy hesitated a little and asked to be listened to calmly, but suddenly, even before he could say anything, someone already asked if they could go out. The boy asked everyone to be quiet. He was just about to explain everything, and it was an incredibly exciting moment, because not everyone understands how an ordinary person can get along with a wild animal. Next to the boy's boot, a black year suddenly appeared. Within a few seconds, a huge wolf shadow head grew over the farm, and the boys left to guard it were frightened. No one even thought that the monster would be so close. The boy shouted, "A monster is hiding in Isagi's shadow." Isagi reached out his hand and asked the boys to calm down. They needed some time to listen to the boy and understand what he was saying, so they wouldn't be so scared of the guests. Once in the forest, a wolf approached a man and offered him to make a deal. The wolf warned coldly, "If you do not satisfy my hunger, the deal is instantly cancelled," but Isagi still agreed. The boy is confident that his farm is not inferior to others, neither in yield nor in the taste of the products. The wolf beamed with a smile at such trust. Now he was sure that his pack would always have something to eat. Ragnant had no idea that such an unusual person could be near the village. Ricardo thought that the boy behaved very mercifully by offering such a terrible monster a deal. Not everyone could be so kind. Isaki is convinced now there is no need to fear attacks. One can calmly return to work. The boys understood everything and do not object, because all this is for the good of the farm and its workers. And suddenly from the shadow behind the boy came a loud question, "Is it okay to come out now?" Isagi allows it, and at that moment, a shadow monster bursts out of the shadow. The monster shakes off its fur, and it flies in all directions. The man immediately suggests discussing the duties again. This is an important point, because now all conditions will be discussed in front of all the workers so that everyone knows what is happening. Isagi says that the wolf's duty is to guard the farm, mostly at night. The wolf fully agrees and asks in return for fruits and vegetables. The agreement is simple, but a few more rules need to be discussed. The boy froze, looking at the fields, and wondered, how much harvest will they gather this year? Mercia asked entrust this matter to her. She was confident that she could briefly and clearly explain everything to the wolf and convince him to agree to the deal. The girl said they will feed the one who guards the village every day until he is full, and every 5 days they will give enough food to feed the whole pack. The wolf decided that the deal was very profitable and agreed, but he became curious. How have people advanced so much in agriculture that they can provide so much food every 5 days? And the boy decided to talk about the rules in general. The wolf did not even suspect that besides duties there could be rules, and the boy explained that they are needed so that it is convenient for them to live together. The wolf quieted down and began to listen carefully. The boy asks him not to attack people, not to break anything, not to touch the crops on the farm without permission, not to damage property, and also to help other workers defend against other monsters. The wolf sharply stomped his paw and interrupted the boy mid-sentence. He said their task is only to guard the farm, and he does not care about other people. The wolf's mood constantly changes, and for a wild animal this is quite normal. Sagi said decisively, not at all. Without the workers the harvest will not grow. Therefore, he wants the wolf to perceive them as part of the farm. This is the most logical reason to protect the other workers. The wolf acknowledges the truth in the boy's words but cannot promise to protect everyone. Although strong, he is not omnipotent. His strength, agility, and endurance also have limits. But for Asagi, this is more than enough. The wolf hissed, clearly dissatisfied. He bent down to the ground and decisively told his pack about the matter. Then he ordered everyone to go out to discuss the details of the deal once more and finally get to work. Suddenly, other wolves came out from behind the main wolf's back, sat in front of him, and quietly listened to his order. Everyone was satisfied with the leader's decision, and no one objected to the terms of the agreement. The wolf strictly ordered to follow the rules and fulfill their duties. The boy noticed that being able to move like a shadow is a very useful skill. Quickly and easily, a strong and agile animal can get everything it needs. Mercia is thinking of going to the village and telling everything to her father and fellow villagers. The boy politely asked her to do this. Only the news remained to be reported to everyone, and then they could get down to business. Here is the wolf's code, Sagi. He asked if the wolves could count on watermelons if they set off for the village right now, and this is quite logical, considering all the conditions agreed upon by both sides. The man did agree and said that he would now lead the wolves to the watermelon field. Isagi carefully selected each watermelon to make sure it was really sweet. He asked to wait a little longer before cutting the fruits. Since the wolves took on guarding the plantation, peace has settled there. The locals no longer worry that someone will attack and spoil the harvest, and the wolves no longer worry about where to find food. Almost 30 black wolves stood on guard. Previously, deer and boars caused damage, but everything was compensated. The wolf pups often ran around the farm, and Mercier smiled and asked them to stop. Mercier and the wolf leader were walking through the city, and Kokuro watched how the wolves from his pack gladly offered their heads to the caresses of the locals. The wolf could not understand how it all came to this, since such powerful and seemingly stern beasts so quickly became obedient. The wolf is convinced that they, demons, live in harmony with nature, so for him the main thing is that people are not against their presence. Mercier smiled. She found it amusing to listen to the wolf argue about their coexistence with humans. Thanks to Vovk Azagi, he can now devote more time to research. He has more opportunities to engage in science and develop new varieties of fruits and vegetables, because now he does not need to worry about protecting the farm. He went down to the basement of the house, tightly clutching the notebook in his hands. The basement turned out to be a real storeroom. It stored various dried herbs, fresh greens, and even ore, and it seemed all this was needed for the peaceful study of various materials. Isagi sought to increase the yield, so he set up an underground experimental farm. Now he needs to collect data that he will later use in his research. Isagi relies on a magical device that captures and stores sunlight and illuminates his underground farm, so he does not worry at all about the light in the laboratory. Unfinished crops can grow quite unpredictably. In the underground experimental farm, plants are grown that are still being experimented on. It turned out that okra is weak, it grows poorly, and provides unpredictable nutritional value, while broccoli sucks too much nutrients from the soil and exhausts the ground. So the boy realized that these crops are not yet suitable for the farm. Isagi is going to move forward, so he called Mercy to check if she was nearby. He did not want the girl to find out what he was preparing for her, because it was very important to him. The boy touched the wall with his poem, and it seemed to instantly disappear. In the room, heavy bunches of grapes with carved leaves hung from the ceiling, and each berry shone like a pearl, catching and reflecting rays of light. The grapes looked appetizing, as if they had just been painted by an artist on a canvas. Curiosity did not let the boy rest. What does it taste like? The group's taste turned out to be too sour. It is not always possible to grow a perfect harvest in a short time. Sometimes it takes several weeks. The seeds are of different sizes, so eating them is quite difficult. The boy felt that finding the golden mean between yield and taste was incredibly difficult, and Isagi even began to consider giving up mass production. But suddenly Isagi remembers Mercia's interested look during the conversation about grapes and realizes he cannot give up, he must keep moving forward, if only to thank the girl for her efforts. The boy understands that Mercia has done a lot for them, and grateful to her, he decides to give the tastiest grapes. He knows for sure that the chosen crop will help realize this plan. Suddenly in the laboratory, Isagi heard someone's voice. He ran out instantly, and the wall behind him immediately seemed completely ordinary. Isagi peeked out from behind the flower pot and saw Mercia. She clearly knew that this man was in the basement. It was impossible for her not to know where he was and what he was doing. After all, they had been friends for so long. Mercy glared sternly at Isagi and said that he has been working too much lately. The girl noticed that the boy has hardly left the workshop for almost 2 weeks. It turns out this guy doesn't notice at all how time flies. Mercia sighed and looked with pity. The girl anxiously warned, if the boy continues to do so, he might get sick. Isagi involuntarily thought that he could use a day off. The boy has no idea what to do on the weekend. It seems Isagi hasn't rested for a long time or maybe never did, so he will need someone's support here too. Mercia still decided to go on a picnic. The day was wonderful. A beautiful flower garden bloomed nearby where one could have a great time, and her knowledge always helped in such situations. He really liked the idea. He immediately suggested starting to prepare right now to make it in time for the picnic today. As it turned out, Mercier had already prepared everything and showed the gentleman a basket with food. Isagi thought it would be cool to invite some colleagues, but it turned out Mercia had already invited them, so the others will join as soon as they finish work. The boy sincerely thanks the girl for helping coordinate their actions. Suddenly, when the boy went out and closed the door behind him, a shadow face jumped out of his shadow. It always appears suddenly, and sometimes even scares those nearby. The boy shuddered. The wolf sneaked up so close that he was already standing behind him. This time he really got scared because the beast was literally nearby. The wolf said he also works on the farm and also wants to go on the picnic. The boy gasped. The wolf named Hakuro also wanted to go on the picnic. The wolf just turned away, showing he wanted to go with the boys and would explain nothing more. Outside the sun shines brightly, and everything around is bathed in gold. Mercia, Isagi, and Kokuro set off on the picnic, walking through the city, through the forest and meadows, and finally found themselves in the flower garden. All the places they had just traveled through spread around them. The boy froze from the beauty he saw when he entered the garden. Large fields of flowers looked just perfect, and a solitary tree was dropping petals right on him. "They have already arrived," said the girl. There were so many flowers that it was simply impossible to count all their types. It turned out the boy didn't even suspect that there was such a beautiful garden near the village. The garden grew countless different flowers, and they only added to its beauty. Isaki gazed at the flowers as if each petal whispered some secret to him. The girl, quietly with interest, watched him. She was happy finally he took a day off and could just relax for his own pleasure. The boy had no idea that there was such a beautiful garden near the village. The boy inquisitively asked about the names of some flowers, and Mercia, who knew all the flowers in this garden, named each one confidently and without hesitation that interested him. Isagi looked surprised the girl knew so many flowers, and he only understood what they were made of, and it seemed to him that this was not enough to simply enjoy a beautiful day in such a wonderful place. The boy approached and asked the girl if he could pick a few of these flowers. Mercia allowed it, but it was still unclear why the boy needed these flowers right now. The boy conjures, and the petals turn into a flower of another color. Mercia immediately noticed. The petals of the Hamsania suddenly turned blue, although just a few seconds ago they were completely snow-white. The boy, with a burning spark in his voice, explained that he changed the elemental composition of the flower using alchemy. The boy extends the altered flower to the girl and says that he gives it to her. Now it is finally clear why he needed the flower from the garden. Mercia did not expect such a gift and was confused. The boy stood a little longer, holding the flowers extended forward, and the wolf did not worry at all. He liked the smell of the flowers so much that he even dozed off among them. In one moment, the boy understood everything. He apologized and wondered, how did he even manage to simply give Mercia a flower? He felt that it was silly and reckless, and that was definitely not how he wanted to show his affection. Here the boy lowers his hand with the flower, and Isagi thought that maybe he was bothering the girl. This upset him, because Mercia does so much for him and does not always find time for herself. Suddenly Mercy took the flower from the boy's hands, said that he did not annoy her at all. She was very pleased to receive such an unexpected gift from Isagi, and although there was no special occasion, the situation itself delighted her greatly. The girl had no idea that the boy knew about one thing. In fact, Mercia was surprised because giving something handmade to a person of the opposite sex has a special meaning. The boy was also surprised, as he did not understand at all what it was about. He asked, "What does this gesture mean?" The girl turned away, smiled softly, and said that it was a secret. Putting a finger to her lips, she showed that nothing could really be told. Isagi got a little scared and asked to return the flower to her, but Merci refused and said that now this flower was hers because Isagi had given it to her. She turned away and listened to the pleasant scent of the flower. That touching and tender moment was suddenly interrupted by a wolf who woke up from a deep sleep. Kokuro was hungry and suggested finally starting to eat after all. They had come to the garden a long time ago, and the table was still not set. The boys spread a blanket under the tree. Mercia opened the basket and said that today they would have sandwiches, and she tried her best so that Isagi would not worry about the picnic. When Isagi and Kokoro looked into the basket, they froze with surprise. There were many different sandwiches in the basket for every taste. The wolf became even hungrier and asked to be given his portion faster. The boy smiled and promised that he would cut him a piece right away. The sandwich was cut in half, and each layer of filling was clearly visible in the cut. The boys happily ate the delicious sandwiches. Juicy and thick ham, crispy lettuce, tomatoes sweet like fruits, and the necessary sourness, all of this simply amazed them. The boy froze with surprise what tasty vegetables had grown on their farm. Mercia also noticed that the vegetables grown by this man had a special taste, and it was hard not to notice how these facts wonderfully complemented each other. Isagi looked at Marcia's sandwich, noticed a bunch of tomatoes and the same cabbage, and decided that it must be very tasty, while Kakuro paid no attention at all to what was mixed inside. The wolf asks if the boys have ready sandwiches with watermelon, and Isagi simply cannot understand how one can eat sandwiches with watermelon at all in his opinion. Such fruits should be eaten just like that, without anything. Isagi thinks, what a strange combination this is. As it turned out, there are even sandwiches with watermelon, and Marcia specially prepared them. The boys were delighted, enjoying sweet watermelon yogurt sandwiches, and also tasting a classic salad made from salted watermelon and cheese. Surprisingly, it sounded incredibly delicious. Mercia asked if Mr. Isagi wanted to try these sandwiches. The man gladly agreed, and the wolf was already savoring the treats, along with his favorite melon. The boy tried the sandwich and felt that the refreshing sweetness of the watermelon and the tartness of the yogurt combined wonderfully. Now he understood that watermelon could be tasty, even in sandwiches. Isagi never liked the cloying capital sweets, but this watermelon sandwich pleasantly surprised him. With its salty sweet taste, Mercia's efforts were definitely not in vain. She knows how to cook any fruit deliciously. The boy smiled and thanked Mercia for the tasty treat, saying he really liked it. The wolf was already sleeping, licking his lips after the delicious meal. Kakuro said that the dish tasted good only because of the watermelon. Isengi smiled and said that only Mercia knows how to make watermelon so tasty, you simply can't come up with a better combination. The girl beamed with joy upon hearing those words. The boy grabbed a second sandwich with the classic flavor. The girl looked at him and smiled. The boys calmly rested under the tree, worrying about nothing, and were glad they could relax so peacefully now. Suddenly, the girl in the field waved her hand and cheerfully shouted that their friends had already started eating. The other workers had already completed the tasks given to them by Marcia and also hurried to rest. It turned out that those were Nai, and the other boys, they were also very hungry after work and were heading to Isagi and Mercia because everyone wanted to try the sandwiches Mercia had prepared. The boy was beaming with joy. The boys had already finished all the work, but you couldn't say the same about Mercia. She was convinced that the boys needed to be given even more tasks. The girl just wanted to spend a little more time with the mentor. The boy asked the girl what she was talking about, and she instantly smiled, said everything was fine, and suggested they step aside a bit. All the boys cheerfully joined the resters. They were wildly happy. Everyone had such a great day off. Kanya greets everyone with good morning. She works in a wonderful trading tent. Others respond to her greeting, and she is always friendly to people. Sellers and buyers working with her is a real pleasure. Isagi noticed the girl, as always, is buying the harvest. Kanya confirmed this and thanked the boy. The boy gestured and said that it was their harvest. This time they managed to gather quite a lot. Kanai came across a pile of crates and barrels with goods. Her heart jumped with joy. She sincerely thanked Isagi, because now the girl had even more goods to sell at the market. Kanya gave her boys the command to start work, and all the carts immediately began to be loaded with goods to the very top. Suddenly the girl's face changed. Isagi noticed this and immediately asked, "What happened?" Honya read a letter from Mercia and learned with horror. The guards are demons. The boy confirmed. Isagi explained that these are shadow black wolves. The boy asked if they should be called, and the girl did not refuse. Isagi called one of the shadow wolves to himself. Kanya blossomed with joy seeing such a cute creature, but one should not forget wild animals can be unpredictable. Kanya asked if she could pet the wolf. The boy explained that if the wolf allows it himself, everything will be fine. But as soon as the girl touched the top of the wolf's head with her palms, her hat instantly flew off her head. The wolf with the hat in his mouth instantly jumped back from the girl, looked at her attentively. Holding the hat with his teeth, he found himself a new toy and had no intention of parting with it. The girl grabbed her head, it was her favorite hat. She lunged at the wolf with all her might and shouted for him to give back her thing, but the wolf, although he did not expect such speed from her, was not going to give up. She did not manage to reach the wolf and fell face down on the ground. Later she asked where the black wolf suddenly went, and from the boy's shadow voices sounded, "The wolf will not let himself be caught so easily." From the boy's shadow emerges Gokuro and apologizes to the girl, holding her hat in his teeth. Suddenly Kanya rushes at the wolf with a scream, rejoicing that she finally caught him, and the girl tightly clung with her hands to the thick fur of the beast. Kokuro froze, unable to move, and Kanya shouted for him to give her the hat. The wolf still agreed, but only if the girl stopped screaming right into his ear. Suddenly Asagi asked Kanya if it was possible to increase the volume of trade by about 1.5 times, and Kanya decided that it was a good proposal. Right now it is almost impossible, there are plenty of carts, but little space. The girl realized that the boy had too much harvest. They grew so many fruits and vegetables that there was nowhere to store them anymore. Then she suggested going to the city to sell the extra vegetables and fruits. For the first time the boy heard about this. Kanya explained that there was a city called Melon nearby, just a one-day walk away. Isadi recalled that it was in this city that they stopped with Marcia on the way to the village. The nearest town to the village is Melen. It is bustling and lively. If the boys go to the market and pay for a spot, they will be able to trade calmly. Thanks to this, Isagi will be able to sell his fruits, and the girl is confident. If this is the harvest from his farm, then the fruits and vegetables will be sold quickly because his harvest is always of high quality. Mercio was even surprised when he heard this news that Boy was going to sell fruits from his stocks, and the girl really liked this idea because she was just thinking of buying something else for the house. But Nea also became eager to go to the city and asked to be taken with them. Mercia asked in surprise why, and Nea frankly answered. Actually, she just wanted everyone to know how delicious the harvest on their farm was, and only she could tell people about it so well. The boy smiled and asked the girl why she really needed to go to the city, and Nea explained that she worked very hard, so she wanted to at least sometimes get to the city to rest and have fun, and in a moment the girl realized what she had said. Sagi arranged everything. The boy suddenly understood. The girl had actually revealed her true intentions to him. Maybe she really wanted to beautifully advertise Isagi's catch, but that was not her main goal at all. Mercy explained that they were not going for entertainment, but on business, and Ni calmly replied that she did not care as long as she got out of the village. Finally, both girls looked at the boy, holding their breath in anticipation of his decision. The boy allowed Nito to go, and the girl immediately rushed to pack her things. Mercia assumed that Isagi took the girl with him on the trip, saying they had been friends since childhood, but the boy disagreed and said that he and Mercia would handle sales, and Nea would work with clients. Marcia agreed, decided to try her best, and entrusted client service to Nea. Nea ran out to the boys, preparing for the trip, and was wearing a short t-shirt and shorts. Mercia noticed that the girl had changed, and Nea explained that these clothes were meant for walking around the city. She was shining with excitement and eagerly awaited this trip, as if she had dreamed of this moment for a long time. Nea asked Mercia why she did not wear something nicer for a change, and Mercia quietly replied that she was working and simply did not have time for that, even if she really wanted to. Nea said it was quite boring, but in fact she would like to see Mercia in nice clothes more often. The girl was very beautiful outside of work. She just did not find time for it. Mercia asked Isagi to hurry if they left now. They would just make it back by night. Isagi agreed and said that on Golem horses they would reach the desired place in 3 hours. Mercia suddenly remembered the last time she rode Golem horses with that boy. She instantly blushed and reached out to cover it. Moments when she had to sit on the horse very close to him, pressed with her whole body, surfaced again in her memory. It turned out that there were 3 horses, exactly as many as needed. Isagi had just enough to make means that would help everyone move faster and save time, and Nea was very happy because she also got a golem. It turned out that the boy had recently obtained new materials, including copper for creating the golem, and Isagi jumped for joy because everything came together. But he noticed Mercy's dark expression and asked what happened. She was so depressed and gloomy because she hoped to ride again with the boy on the same horse to be closer to him. Mercy sat on the horse like a stone and coldly ordered to prepare for departure. The boy decided that she probably did not like the horse, and Isagi could not always understand what this girl really felt. The boys set off on the road and galloped, laughing across the endless fields. Nea shone with happiness she was taken with them, and even given a separate horse, so finally she could feel the freedom she had long dreamed of. Nea exclaimed with excitement that she finally saw the city. Isagi rejoiced at this news. The boys could already make out the roofs of houses peeking out behind a strong and reliable wall. The boys entered the city through a large arch, getting lost in the whirl of the crowd of other people. Mercy skillfully jumped off the horse and went further on foot. They still had quite a way to go. The boys strolled through the city, which was bustling with people and various magical creatures. Nea was fascinated by almost all its inhabitants, and Isagi realized that Milan was truly a very large city. The boys stopped on the way to the large arches, which seemed to lead to the very heart of the city. They also saw many merchants who had come here to sell their goods. Nea decided that the boys were in this city for the first time, but Isagi just smiled. He had already been to Milan, only then he came on business, and did not have time to look around the local sights. He quickly switched to another transport. Nea was delighted finally. The boys could take their time and look around well, and Isagi agreed too. Now they had the opportunity to see the city and properly engage in trade. But first the boys needed to sell their things and earn some money. Nega really wanted to help Isagi and Mercy with this, and suddenly Mercy and Isagi froze, noticing something among the people. Mercy froze in place when she saw beautiful jewelry behind glass windows. Precious stones brightly sparkled in the sun, as if beckoning with their glow, and the chains on which they hung seemed light and elegant. Isagi remembered the moment when the girl wildly liked one thing. He then asked Mercia if she liked that thing, but she waved it off, denying and saying that it was not like that at all. He clearly feels what worries Mercia and immediately notices that she cannot hide her emotions at all. After work, Isagi decides to prepare a gift for her. He sincerely wants to pleasantly surprise Mercia. The boys arrived at the bazaar. Around stood a sea of tents with various goods. The boy paid for the chosen spot, set up his tent, and now had to arrange the merchandise. Isagi was happy how nicely he arranged the goods. Crates of vegetables and fruits stood on the shelves, but Nea was not impressed at all. She believed that fruits and vegetables should look even more attractive. The girl did not like the appearance of the counter at all, while Mercia and Isagi confidently said that everything was very simple with them, and the fruits were exceptionally tasty. Thought it was clearly visible at their counter. Ni sighed dissatisfied. She hoped the boys would understand. The customers had no idea what delicious fruits and vegetables grew on their farm. Ni tried to convey this thought to the boys as clearly as possible. Mercia and Isagi froze in amazement. This thought seemed to have just flashed through their minds, and before they had not even suspected it. Nia began to explain what exactly needed to be done to resolve the situation at the checkout. The girl carefully looked into the boxes of fruits and vegetables. Nea suggested selling not only fruits but also fresh juice, and fortunately Isagi had a blender with him. Nia decided that food should be served in nice dishes, and it turned out that Mercia had many wonderful country baskets that were just perfect for beautifully presented food. Now Nea decided to gather various fruits together. Mercia and Isagi watched with interest to see what the girl would come up with. Nea arranged a fruit selection in a basket that cost 3 silver coins. Composition looked simply incredible. Such a basket would be a perfect gift or souvenir. Nea proudly looked at her work and waited for buyers. The boy wondered, would anyone buy this basket?